All right. Good morning. Welcome and thank you for attending the pre-conference workshop number 1, Grasping the Power of Python with your speaker, Skip Daniels. I'm going to ask Skip to go ahead and do a little bit of his bio here in just a moment after we read the script. um, this session is being recorded and will be available on the conference website after the event. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the chat, or you can raise your virtual hand down at the bottom, and we can call on you to unmute yourself to ask your question. We encourage you to submit questions anytime you have them. For continuing education credit, please make sure that your name is correctly spelled in the Zoom. And Mr. Daniels, please go ahead.
Hey, if you don't know me, I'm Skip Daniels. I'm working with the city of Greensboro. My official title is Senior Developer, but mainly I do ETL work now, and I'm also the administrator of our enterprise, which we keep behind the firewall. I went to, oh, here comes the app, guys. I went to Western Carolina University. I've got 2 degrees. One is a BS in emergency medicine. The other one is a BSBA in computer information systems. But I've been doing Python probably since about 2008. And my GIS, basically, I'm a developer that learned GIS. I had a good mentor I worked for Forsyth County or Map Forsyth up to 2018. So basically, I program many languages, but Python is the greatest language. I love it the most. Um, uh, like I said, I do plenty of programming. I even program microcontrollers. They're about the size of basically a card, um, but using C++. But Python has a couple limitations, but for everything, Python is a great language. It has weaknesses in like web development, but for everything else, it's great. Python basically was developed in 1989 by a guy from Google during his Christmas vacation. And the reason it's called Python is because he was a big fan of Monty Python, Flying Circus. So he named it Python. What I'm going to start off with today is just a couple of demos that I'm playing with outside of work, believe it or not, just to show you how you can really grasp Python to do different things. And we're going to go into Python structure. You know, I'm going to look at my Python primer with the link I gave you for the Dropbox. We're going to go through basically the foundations of Python real quick. And we're going to just do a little bit of sample code, coding, going through each section. But, if you got any questions at all when we go through, like, what is a string and how to do string and what the syntax is and everything else, feel free to ask a question. So basically, this is an application right here called, I call it the City of Greensboro's Enterprise Manager. This was developed, this is using Python 3x, which is given to you with Pro, or you can download it and install it, no problem. And I'm also using the Esri's Python API for this. This is a tool that I gave you. It's called Qt Designer. And any of y'all who's done programming, especially with Microsoft, if you got Visual Studios, this is basically just like it in a way, because you can design your forms with all the different tools over here and everything. So I pulled this up because some of these processes take a little bit since I'm outside the firewall. But basically, this program right here You can bring in, you can see it takes like 7/10 of a minute to bring this in. These are all the users right now we have in our enterprise or our portal. Brings it into a table by just clicking this, get portal users. And you can sort by names. It gives you the ability to sort. And the cool thing about it is, you can sit there and say, here's me. My real name's Anthony. And you can bring my information down. Later on, when I feel like finishing this, I can make drop downs for like disabled levels and all this. And I can edit myself on Portal by changing it and saving it. So technically, I can disable myself or something like that. And the cool thing is, I can export all my users, all this information for each user with a CSV that quick. It's done. And then over here, we'll have portal content. Oh, we get to watch this one. This is pretty quick. This brings in our web maps, our web apps, our insights, and our dashboards. So you can sort on all that. We can bring in, say, like our insight right here. Gives you the report right here. And by clicking here, it'll take me right to it. Now, it might take a minute to load that, sorry. So we'll just go back to the app while it's loading. But like I said, I can export that CSV. Technically, I can change the access of this right here. And so far, we got 17 views on it. Our enterprise is still kind of young. It's only 6 months old, but we're getting every department hooked onto it now. Then I also have a screen showing our top 10 views of web apps, web maps, insights, and dashboards. And then I pull in my portal information. This helps me manage my portal, basically my portal information on this, which shows me, okay, I got ability to hold, I got these backwards, sorry. I have 1,136 licenses or viewers I could have. This should be 118 here. Sorry, I got them backwards. But my creators, I got 36. I've already signed 16. I got 20. That's the expiration date. I got 1,100 viewers. I got 102 already assigned. These buttons right here will bring me right to the server manager or the admin of that server manager. My hosting server, my 2 federated servers with that, and then my licenses. Well, this is really an extension. And the bad thing about Portal or Enterprise, I can't get the last date they log in for this, but I can find out, okay, I have 17 extensions for utility network using 10. I've got 8 for insights. I'm using 4 and I got 4 left. Same thing with AGOL. I'm gonna pull my AGOL users in. Right now we got 98 users, and say I'll pull me in. I don't like to show anybody else. My information, which I can also do the same thing later on, make drop downs for these, and I can disable myself or change my access or my role or anything. And yes, I can make a CSV out of it just like that. Same thing with content. We've got 1,284 pieces of content on AGOL. And technically, like I said, I can sort on things. I can pull in a dashboard or anything like that. Now it brings in everything. So, there's a test. But the good thing about it is you can find out what the access is in private, how many views it's had, and I can go right to the content on that. Same thing with my AGOL top 10 of what's shown, what our content is. This is always good to know. My boss likes to know, okay, what is our top 10 dashboards or insights or anything like that. So that's automatically comes right up. And then I go my AGL information. And every time I click that button, it reloads it. So you can see I have 10 community analysts that's all used. I've got 5 total insights, which I got 1 free. We have no level 1s on our AGOL. So technically I got 20 licenses left that I can assign. And then I can go right to my servers. Balius, which takes almost 3 minutes to load. That's the reason I already loaded it already. This is our non-enterprise, well, non-federated server. Basically, this does all our outside work for our services and stuff, which I have the capability to say, like, orthos here, and I can bring in the data for that. I can stop the service since it's already started, and if it was stopped, this button right here would be enabled, and this one would be disabled, and I can go right to where the service is located that quick. So, granted, I can do all this stuff if I pull up each manager and do that. This is our federated server, and it takes about a half a minute to load. And the same thing, I can look at all the services. The cool thing about it is, naturally that doesn't have an AGL line, but if we go to this one here, I can go to it on the server itself, or I can go to AGL, not AGL, sorry, our portal, and go right to where it's located on portal. And I can start and stop it too. This is something that you can build, and it's not hard to build. What I want to teach today is, first of all, don't get the misconception that programming is a science. It's not a science, it's an art. Everybody has their own different brush strokes. Don't think it's a science. You get your own style of development and everything like that. And I'm going to teach you my development, and you can come up with your own style. I've talked to a lot of people pre-conference with emails. Thank you for emailing me back. And you making models and exporting it to Python. That is fantastic. Believe it or not, that's how I started. The only bad thing about exporting to the Python is it does it completely linear. There's nothing breaks. So if something breaks in that, the whole script is gone. And it doesn't break it down to each function. And I'm going to teach you today basically how to break things down to functions, or we call definitions. It's a DEF. We'll teach you what that is if you don't know it. And what's so cool about that is you don't have to build the full script at one time. You build it part by part. That's why you break it down to functions. And I'm going to say functions. I'm not going to call them diffs. They're functions. So you get one function right. Okay, I got part of it right. Now I'll work on the next one. And then we'll join it together. That's how you build stuff. You don't build the whole script at one time. You build it piece by piece. Because if you try to build the whole thing at one time, you're going to get frustrated if something's broken. And then you got to run that whole script to see where it's broken. You can run each definition or each function separately to see if it works right. I do have another little demo here. This one is not GIS, but, let me just show you. Here's the code. Now, like I said, this is Python 3 using the API, the JavaScript API, not Java, but, the Python API for Esri, which is loaded when you got Arc Pro. And granted, there is quite a few lines of code in here. 32, around 3,300 counting spaces and comments, which comments are very important. I'm going to tell you, we're going to go over that quite a bit. I wrote another one, and this was just plain. Now this one right here took me about 4 nights after work to build and build pieces of it. This is another one that I built that I wanted to utilize lots of things that Python can do outside of GIS that you might be able to incorporate in GIS. And you'll laugh what's called. This is a school management system. This whole thing is hooked to a database. Everything is in a database in this. Now I'm using PostgreSQL for this, so I'm not using our Microsoft SQL database. But everything you do this can be hooked to a Microsoft SQL database or anything. And there's also a good session taught a couple days from now on PostgreSQL, which anybody does QGIS knows of PostGIS, which runs in PostgreSQL, and Israel uses PostgreSQL, especially for their big data stuff, because it's a great database for it. It's free. And you can also install SDE on PostgreSQL. But what this is, basically, is a little system that you log in. Now, the cool thing about this is, if you miss the login, I capture the username and the password when you log in, the date, the computer you're on, and the IP address, the time and date, and the IP address, and the computer name you're on. Even if you miss logging in, excuse me, captures that too into a table so you can look at it. But what's really cool, this whole thing basically runs on a student. Now, the reason I want to show this is a query window. You build a query. You can go by what the first name is, middle name, last name, and you can build your own query to pull data in. You can do this with features. You can pull in what you want to pull in. You can build a query window. And I have drop downs for this. Now, right now, I only got 2 students, so basically I'm searching just on active. And like I said, this whole thing runs on this. And then you bring in their information, you know, their name and address, and their parents' name and their address. All this is read-only right now, because you're not going to be, you know, you can edit it and everything, or you can add a new student. But like I said, the whole thing runs on, see, John's still there. And we can pull in his grades. Now, what's really cool is you can also do this. I'll build a PDF. I'm going to teach you how to build a PDF. It's real easy, of his stuff. So then when you build a PDF, I can close that PDF. You wouldn't want to send an email. That just tells me I closed it. And right here, if I say yes, it might take a minute or two for the email. See, it said to send it. I'm using Gmail to send this, and I'm sending it to myself. And when it comes up, I'll show you what it is. But there's different things you can do. The whole thing runs on attributes. So you can go in here and change attributes. Say we're going to a 7-point scale. You can change the 7-point scales. Here's the email that was sent to me. You know, here's your PDF, and it sends the PDF with it. So, I mean, there's capabilities for lots of things for this. I'm not going to go over too much of it, but admin reports is really good. Now, this whole thing runs on roles. You have a user, you have a staff member, you have an admin, and then you have a super admin, which right now I'm a super admin. I can click here. This dynamically brings in every table that belongs to this application and tells me how many records I got. So as an admin, I want to find out how many, I want to pull this out to a CSV, how many attempts I've had people try to get into my application. And I just did a CSV. Now, this is one of the few things that I can truncate if I want. Well, this is not one of them, sorry. But my history, I keep all history. So if you do any updates or anything like that, I do have history. So we can, you have to do a CSV before it lets you truncate. And then you can say, do you want to truncate this? If I say yes, it's going to ask for a separate password to protect it. Sorry, can't do it. But just different things that you can do. Now, what's really cool too, if we want to do parent messaging, we can send an email. We have several topics, you can put it in, but we can also send a text message. Say we got an activity, I'm not much of a typer, so I'll just say test. Now I got my phone right next to my microphone. Just listen here. There's my text message. And this application also does a big brother thing. Any text message or email sent from this messaging system gets saved in the database. So you can see, okay, what person said what to a parent. So, and also there's a cool little thing in here I put in here that you can send we can do a message board. Say we want to say hello, and then give a message like hello staff. Oops, not hello staff. That would be not good for them. You send an expiration date, so this will stop showing up. We'll say 31 and keep it the same year and send it. Okay, it's been posted. So now if I got out of my system, which that captures my log off time and everything else, and I go in, it pops up. Everybody will get that until it expires. Just a little thing, something cool. And this is all written in Python. This GUI and everything else. This GUI is basically developed in, like I said, Designer, which I gave everybody. Believe it or not, it takes me longer to design something than it did to me to write the code, because every one of these are controls that you got to name and pull into your code. But like I said, I just wanted to show you some of the cool things that you can do with Python. Like I said, get a computer name, get the IP address they're on, save dates. You can interact with the database real easy, which I'm going to show you how to interact by changing attributes using SQL instead of using ArcPy, because if you used ArcPy, you won't be able to do it because if someone's on that feature, it's locked. SQL doesn't care about that. So do we have any questions right now? And we'll go into the beginning of basically learning Python. And don't be afraid, just ask questions. Okay, no questions. Okay. Well, one thing about me, I work with probably 8 different languages in my job. And I guess you could say I'm kind of fluid in 12 different programming languages. There's no way I can remember every single language at all times. I'm old. I'm 57 years old. I program so many different things. Python, I have at least 60 different Python scripts that get run either daily or weekly, scheduled. And I want to show you how I keep up with that, but it's, even me, I come back to my primer and look at this. And I'm a person, I like taking notes. I take notes on everything. My old job, if you remember, if you know me, I used to work for Maps Life, Joseph. And my nickname there was General Wiki, because I would take notes on everything and share them. But if you got to the Dropbox and download this, you can go through it with me, or we'll just go through it with, you can watch my screen. So basically, this is a primer on, and I made this special just for all NCARC user group members. Basically, it just gives you a quick primer on a Python syntax. Now, we're not going to be using all this, and we're not going to go over all this, especially if you're a GIS professional, an analyst or anything like that. You know what an attribute is, well, an attribute, but you know what variables are. I mean, you got integers, you got, okay, we're going to do just the GIS version. You got integers, you got float, you got double, you got, they call it text, which is string, and we have dates. So basically, that's the different types of variable. Now, if you're another programmer in languages, say C# or stuff like that, Python is really cool. Python, to me, is one of the easiest languages to learn, because a variable could be anything. You don't have to assign a variable to an integer. You don't have to assign it to any type of type you want. It can be anything. It holds everything. It is completely what we call object oriented. I mean, it can hold anything. A variable can hold an array. It can hold a class. It can hold anything you want it to hold. We're going to go over what a class is and stuff like that. For your C# people and stuff like that, a class is really nothing but a structure to hold data. Which I'm old school, and I love that because I'll show you why a class is so cool to have and so easy to go through. Say you're pulling in a whole feature, each row is a class, and you can go in and change things or look at things or anything like that real easy. So right now we're just going to go basically in, we're going to look at strings. Because we're basically we're going to be going over is stuff that you're going to be using every single script. Now, like I said, a string can use a double quote or a single quote. Print is your best friend. Print means it's going to show in the console window, which we'll show you in a minute. We're going to go over some of this stuff real easy. But instead of saying A equals a string, A is now a string of hello. Now, the cool thing is you probably won't use multi-strings, multi-line strings, because you're going to be using basically this. Say you pull in a feature and you got an address. So A can be equal to that address of that feature of that row. Strings are arrays or lists. That is so cool in Python because, okay, hello world. I want, now you got to remember, this is 0 based. So H is 0 going through this. It gets, you'll remember this once you start developing. But I just want the letter that is in that string A, hello world, I want the position of 1, which is what? E, 0, 1. I want that. That is really good because if you just want part of a description, you just want that word or anything like that, this is one way of getting it. Now you can start the string like right here. There's other ways of doing this. So many different ways you can do things. I'm going to start at position 2, which remember 0, 1, 2 is the first L, and I'm going to grab the first 5 letters or first 5 positions. So I'm going to print that out, and that's string B, says hello, comma, world. It's going to be LLO. Now, for us GIS people, Esri is, they don't have something what we call varchar, variable text. So when you assign something 256 characters and you store 10 characters in it, it's still going to have 256 characters. The rest of it is going to be blanks, which can be really nasty. Very, very nasty. So Python has a thing that's associated to a string called strip. And there's a left strip and a right strip. You can see that there's a space before hello and a space after world. But there's also space in between. Strip only grabs the front and the back spaces of any string. So then if you run this, you're going to get rid of those spaces that are in between your full text or your full string. And this is a lifesaver, a big, big lifesaver. And then if you want to find out how long that string is, you can type in length or LEN A, and it's 13 characters long. Now this doesn't count as that as being a 0. That is counting at 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got to kind of remember that the length is going to tell you the full length, not counting by 0. But if you want any of these, this is all what we're going to call indexed by 0. Then there's cool little things like, I want to make something fully lowercase. You can use a.lower. You can make that all lowercase, or you can make it all uppercase. And there's one in here I forgot to put that you can use something called your string dot title, which will capitalize just the first letter of each word, which is great for names. Say you got a first name, last name, middle name. I mean, first, middle, and last name. You want to make sure they're all capital for their beginning of their names. So you can use title, and it will do that for you. And then here's something else that you're going to be using quite a bit too, is string replace. Killer little method that you can use on a string. Say I want to replace all the capital H's with a capital J. Sorry, I got a cough. So you'd run, here's a string, hello world. You run a replace. Okay, we're going to replace capital H's. Now this is all sensitive, case sensitive stuff now. Python is totally case sensitive. And we're going to place it with J. So now we got Jello World. You can also split a string by what we call a delimiter. Say we want to split out this because we're using comma delimited, or we can use a pike, which is a straight up and down line, or some type of delimiter. And when we split this, you will see it will split it to hello and world. If we don't use a print and assign it to a variable like B, we want to get hello. It will be kind of like this up here, that we will grab the first one. So hello would be 0 and world would be 1. So if we printed that, it would just say hello if we did a split on it. We're going to go over this in just a second. We're going to do some live stuff on this. String formatting, it's cool, but you really don't use it as much. But okay, for this, here is something that you got to remember. A plus in string is what we call concatenation. So you're adding a string to another string. You cannot add an integer variable to a string without transforming it. So if age, you can see, is 36, that's automatically a number or an integer. So if you concatenate it, you're going to get an error because that's an integer and that's a string. So we use something called str, which will transform this integer to a string, and then you concatenate it or add it, and it will print right. So you're going to be using this a lot. Say you've got a street number and you want to add it to the street, and the number is an integer. You're going to have to use something like str to make it a string, to add it to your address, to make a new variable or something like that. Same thing if you got a string and it's a number, you would use like int to make it integer, or type out float or double to change it to a float or a double. Now, to bring that home, we're going to go ahead and open our IDE here and say we got something called name equals, I'm not modest, skip. Okay, now name is now associated to skip. The thing about it is variables are also case sensitive. So name, if I do it like that, is not going to equal to this name. If you have complex names like you can type it like that. We call this camel casing. Like first, it's a good idea to start a variable with a lowercase, but you can camel case it. You can say first name, and it will be easier to read when you start looking through your code. And you should basically name your variables something that you recognize. Don't just start using A or I. Now, I is like, you know, in your programs out there, I will tell you that's usually a counter or something like that, which you can use that. You can use word counter. So we're going to go, let's clean this up down here. And we're just going to go ahead and use our friend down here to print it into the console window. And IntelliSense is really nice sometimes. And we just run it. And you can see that down there. It brings in skip. Now, we got something called age. Yes, I'm going to tell everybody how old I am. Now, the cool thing about it is you don't have to transform it if you're just printing that variable, because we're not concatenating it to a string. So I can print age 57. Now, like we were talking about earlier, say we want to go name. I'm concatenating some string, and you can add string to this. String. And then I'll say, and close my print. Now, is this going to work? No. Watch what happens. You get an error. Cannot concatenate a string and an integer. So to fix that, we'll have to go ahead and convert that to a string. str, and oops, sorry. Put it in parentheses. Now we can run it. Come on, mouse. Skip is 57. Now, like I said, we can make this to a variable. We can say, greet's now going to equal name. And the reason I got error because I have an extra parentheses there. And this is like how you do an address, you know, street name, well, street and then street number. Sorry, you probably put it in that order, but, and then you can say, oops. Greet, and we run it. Same thing. But now greet has this variable with that string and this new string age all in one variable. And you can use that for anything. We can take greet and say we want to say, well, we can assign to a variable. We can just do it real easy and just do this. Say we want to do a print. We're going to go greet. Sorry, bad typing. Dot. We want to replace something. If I can spell right. We're going to replace I is, sorry, case sensitive. And we're going to use bad grammar. So now if we run that, you can see it's also doing the print down here, sorry. But we can say skip R57. So you can see there's some cool stuff that you can do to manipulate your attributes in your tables or your data from CSVs or anything like that by using replace. You're going to be using replace quite a bit. So, and like I said, we can also yank out each individual variable or each individual character, because you got to remember, greet is really a list or an array of this. So that's a whole thing, and you can pick out each character if you want. Or we can split it on space, and that becomes a list that this will be the first 0 of that list. R would be a 0 of that list. I mean 1, and 57 would be 2 of that list. I guess that's a little difficult to understand. Let's just do that. So we're going to take, basically, we'll call it SP equals greet dot, we're going to split it. And when we split, we want to go ahead and split it on a delimiter, like a comma or a space. There's the space.
Hey, Skip, pardon the interruption. Someone is asking if there's a way that we can increase the text on the
I
screen
am
so
so
that they
sorry.
can.
How's that?
How's that, Jim?
I should have done it at the beginning. I'm so sorry, man. I forget how
Awesome,
tight this
thanks.
can be. So right now we're going to split that full string, which is skip R57, and then we're going to grab skip. So basically we just go ahead and print it. We're going to say SP, and we're going to grab the first thing out of that, which is 0. So if we run it, let's clean up down here. You remember we printed out the whole thing anyway. We just grabbed skip out of it because we cut it. We cut that whole string, skip R57, and by the spaces, we had 3 things. And if you don't know what the 3 things are, you can always, how long this thing will be, you can always do the length of SP, and it will tell you how long how many things we split it into. We split it into 3. Now, this is the tricky part. You got to remember, if you can't use 3, because we use 3 here to try to grab 57, we will get an error because that's 0 based. It will sit to be out of index. And it's a good thing to see this stuff that I'm showing you errors, because then you don't have to freak out and go, oh God, what does that mean? It just means, okay, we forgot that's 0 based. So we want the age. You see the length is 3. We're grabbing 2, which is 0 based on that, to 57. Now, anybody has any questions on string manipulation at all? This is very important in Python and GIS, because the biggest thing I do Python for is manipulating data with GIS. And string manipulation, you got to remember, you get these things with descriptions and they're really long, or say we, using the Esri text field for that feature, and it's set at 256 or whatever, 100, and you only put 10 in there, you're still going to get 100 characters back, and you want to get rid of all those spaces, so you got to use strip. Or, which is, I didn't show that, but you just use strip with that, and it will get rid of all the spaces at the end or the beginning. Really, anybody got any questions on that? There's no stupid questions, people. Okay.
Hey, Skip, it's Hope. So
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. So where is it? 256 characters everywhere?
No. When you build a feature and and you're putting a variable into it and you're doing text, it automatically says, okay, you want it 50.
Gotcha.
change it to 256 or I'll show you that later when it comes
Gotcha.
up.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
And you're only putting 10 in it. You're still going to have 50 characters in there because a space is a character. And then you say you want to use it somewhere, and say you're using it for a dashboard, and then you want to show that. It's going to come out, and you try to do a selector on that. You'll have to put that beginning 10 characters with another 50, the rest of the 40 characters, spaces for dashboard to be able to select that. So you can go in and manipulate that, and I do that all the time, and change it to, and make a new feature out of it technically, and get rid of those 40 extra spaces. So my analysts can go, oh, okay, cool. Then I'll just use those 10 characters.
Okay. I gotcha. I know exactly what you're talking about.
If you're a database person, you always use varchar or
Yep.
anything like that, get rid of all the extra spaces. But Esri doesn't use anything called varchar. It's all just text.
Okay.
And it comes out as char in the database. Cool?
Cool.
Killer. Now,
And Skip, Paul is asking, can you show us how to get started and where you're creating this? If you want to write the code and follow along, how does he get started? He has,
and I put that. I thought I put that in some of the instructions, but I included in the Dropbox a nice little easy IDE. So you don't want to use idle. Idle's terrible, and it's called PyScripter that you can install.
cool.
And PyScripter, the reason it's cool, it's easy to use, very easy to use. You can set breakpoints and you can run it through what we call a debugger, or you can run it, and it does have a little bit what we call IntelliSense, that if I start typing GR, it's going to tell you what the word is, and you can hit tab and it'll fill the rest of it in. So there's something I put in Dropbox called PyScripter.
So we're having some issues with Dropbox. So if you haven't already sent Skip your email address, go ahead and send that to him. I put that in the chat. I think he might have to give permissions. I think too many people may have access it. Yeah, too many people, I think, accessed it at once, and it locked.
Oh, yeah, that's the reason I sent that email out to everybody saying, hey, let's go ahead and download this thing when you get a chance, because what's cool about my Dropbox is, yeah, it's big. It's close to 700 megs. But like I said in the beginning, I document everything. And technically, I'm giving you everything that I've documented and everything like that, just for references. And also, some of my major scripts I wrote in the past was with Matt Forsyth. I desensitized them, which means I just took out the username and passwords. But you will learn by looking at, if you haven't done it already, looking at other Python code, and I document very well in my code that how to do something, like how do you read an XML, or how to do certain things. You can look at these big scripts, find out how I did, where I did it, and each function, because I break everything down in functions. And you can look how I did the code, and you can grab that code, and you might have to tweak it here and there for your use, but then you'll be able to see how to do it. And then I also have what I call Python snippets, which I update all the time, how to do different things like using ArcPy search cursors to search through features, looking for, using a where clause. Kind of like you do in ArcMap when you set up a selection and you want to go by attribute, and you set up your little where clause. So it's basically how to do that. So in the Dropbox, you should see this. Now, actually, it's not going to be the same URL because I set it up. Now, I shared it with, I'm sorry, everybody who I had an email for that Joseph Sloop gave me Wednesday night. So we got issues with this later. You could use IDL or idle for this, but I did give you PyScripter in here. Let's see, PyScripter right here. I would use this one. Don't worry about the 64-bit one. Use the 32-bit one, because if you're using basically the Python that gets installed with ArcMap or even Pro, it's a 32-bit. Don't worry about bits, but I would install this one right here. PyScripter 30 regular one, not the 64-bit. And it's real easy to install, and it really easy to work with. And if it's overloaded, I'm sorry. You really don't have to have it today, but if you can get it and download it and follow us through, it would be great, so you can get your own ability to type stuff in and follow through. We have different, everybody knows what plus, minus, times, divide. Modulus means just give me what's returned. Exponential, if you ever use it. Floor gives me the lowest value. We don't have really time to go through all the different operators. You can do bit operators. Remember, you have and, or, that's for bitwise, which I'll never see unless you go into scientific stuff with Python. You don't ever usually use bitwise at all. All right. Well, you're trying to download the Dropbox, and during the break, I'll make sure I get your email address, and I'll put that into the Dropbox if you have any issues. We're going to go over lists. Now remember, a string variable is a list. And if you're old school like I am, a list is an array. They are interactive. So I might say array and I might say list. They are the same thing. But you can have a list of strings. Say we got this list. 0 would be apples. B will be, 1 will be bananas. 2 will be cherry. And if you output it, you will get the brackets. And it will show you what's in that list like that. But just like we did in string, we want to get the first index, the index 1 of that list, like we did in string. 0, 1, 2, it'd be banana. Same thing if you want to replace banana. You can say that position 1 of that list, or index 1, will be banana because apple's 0. We'll make it black currant, print it out. We got rid of banana.
Skip, Paul is asking, can you open PyScripter and then show us what to do to get started from there?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open up PyScripter. What you do, we'll just get rid of this one. We just hit this up here, which is new, and you get this. Don't worry about this, just delete it. And to make sure it's working, type in something like print, quote, hello. And then you hit the green run button, and it should say hello. And if you have an issue with that, sometimes PyScripter will not find out where Python is. I can show you how to point to where we call the interpreter, or the python.exe, for this to be able to pull it up. Because if you see here, says remote interpreter, which is showing me where my Python is reinitialized or running.
Can you increase the text size for them, please? Is that better? Catherine, Sally, is that good? You're welcome to use the little virtual thumbs up as well. Okay, good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever done this thing virtually, so I'm used to having a big screen behind me and everything like that, be able to show this. So anytime you got any questions like that, don't hesitate to stop me, please. People who know me, like Hope and all that, they know I can keep talking. Okay, like I said, a list is like when we went over strings. It's a bucket that holds different things in it. We're going to be using this quite a bit. I'm not going to go over it right now because I'm going to show you how you really can use it in some of the code that we're going to go over that is really cool, because we're going to go into how to use some of the ArcPy tools and things like that. And I want to show you how it's so cool. We're going to go into SQL, especially, you know, only if the feature is in a SQL, or not a SQL database, well, in a database, a true SDE database, how to manipulate those attributes, and people could be already on it. The bad thing about GIS, or you could say, if it's in a file geodatabase, you cannot use SQL on it, because a file geodatabase is basically a proprietary thing for Esri, and you have to use ArcPy to communicate with it, which we're going to be using file geodatabases quite a bit. I'm going to show you how to create it in code, how to move stuff into it, and how to use that, and after you get everything developed right, how to move it into SDE. I love using file geodatabases. A lot of my code, I do all my work in file geodatabases because I do not want to mess with the production feature until I'm ready. And you can look at different steps. You can pull that file geodatabase up in catalog and look what you've done and make sure it's right. So we're going to go over all this. I know I'm going over this part fast, but you will learn this real quick. Don't worry. If you start playing, you will really understand all the syntax of this. And for your other developers out there that don't know the languages, I think you can see that Python really is an easy language to learn. It really is. And I'm glad it is the backbone of GIS. So basically, like I said, a list is like a string, except it's broken down into pieces. And you can also do if it exists. I don't use this much, but you can. You can say, we're going to go over what an if is. But if Apple is in that list, say, okay, I'm going to print Apple, or Apple's in that list. So it searches that string. Yeah, there's Apple. Remember, Python is case sensitive. So if you had a capital A PPLE, it will not bring that back. Everything is case sensitive. And like I said, a link to the list, just like we did for the string, is len, length. And you remember it brought back 3 because there's 3 in there. But you remember, to get each individual piece, it's 0 based. So that's really 0, 1, and 2. But it's good to know 3, because then you can always say, really, my length is really 3 minus 1. You know it's really a length of 2. You got that in the back of your head, so then I can go 0, 1, 2 to grab all that stuff. Now, let's go into the conditionals. This is what we're going to be using to query data, basically, you could say. I know I'm skipping stuff here, but this is stuff that we don't go over as much when you do your work. Let's go over and look at an if statement. This is some of your meat and potatoes right here. So you brought your data in and you want to make sure, hey, I'm looking for this street. So if street equals this, we're good. Now, when we're looking for an if, and you want to make sure you say street equals the street name, it's 2 equal marks, 2 equals. 1 equal in Python means you're assigning a variable to data, like A equals hello. But to search through or do a conditional, it's always 2 equals. And a lot of languages are like that, it's like C# and stuff. It just helps Python understand that. Not equal, you can use the 2, I forgot what those things are called, but you can use the less than, equal than, side by side. But the best syntax is the exclamation point equals, not equals, then, you know, less than equal, greater than equal. Okay. On an if statement, this is very important. Python uses basically, oh, what's the good word for it? I got to make sure I say it right. Indentions for code, what we call code blocks. Say you got an if statement. That's got to be indented in. Because if it doesn't, it just thinks it's another line of code and you're going to get an error. Because if you have an if, say if B is greater than A, you end that if statement with a colon, the next line has to be indented in. And everything that runs underneath that if has to be indented in. That's the same thing with functions or diffs. Any code block has to be indented in. A lot of languages end their code with semicolons. JavaScript, C#, C++. Python doesn't use that. So it uses indentions. If you're old school like I am, you probably heard of COBOL. COBOL's the same way. It was all indented for code blocks. So you got to remember, indentions are very, very important, which your IDE automatically does that for you. So if you did A equals 33, B equals 200, if B is greater than A, and you don't indent, you will get an error. And it will say, you know, indentation error. But then if you do indent, it will run. And I will show you that in code. Like I said, we're going to be going over a lot of code. I have it all for you that you can look at, except for a couple new things I haven't put up there that I decided to write Saturday night to show you some real cool things. I want to show you some tips and tricks and stuff that will inspire you and that are not hard to write, that will really, really, hopefully blow your mind on some stuff. Remember, okay, for your old school people or other languages, C#, you have something called a case statement. Python does not have a case statement. And the people who don't know other languages, do not worry about what a case statement is. But so say we're looking for B greater than A, else if. That means we got an if here, and if that doesn't equal that, else if A equals B. So we're saying if that, okay, if it's not that, else if this, then run that. Because we have another statement called else. So say we don't have this else if, we'll say if B is greater than A, okay, let's print that. Else, we know that B is not greater than A, and then instead of typing else if A or B is less than A, we already know that B is going to be less than A. Then we're just going to say else A is greater than B. Sorry. Which I will show you that in code. So if is a great tool. This is how you're going to do your querying on data that's already in the script that you already have. This is like your where clause. A where clause is nothing but an if statement, really. If you know a SQL, you're going to say if this equals this, or if this is not this, or whatever. And like I said, this will come more and more prevalent when we start going through the code. I guarantee it. And I document it really well. We do have other loops. Oh yeah, you can put an and statement in here. These can get tricky. So if A is greater than B and C is greater, now they both have to be true to run. Or if you use an or in between them, one of them has to be true. An if statement only works if that statement's true. So if it's not true, it will not run. Or it will not run that code underneath it. That's why I use an else. While loops means while something is running, basically you set a counter or a length or whatever, like I equals 1, while I is less than 6, print I. This is very important. After every time that runs, we want to make sure that we're increasing I. This little syntax plus equals, you don't have to use it that way. That really means I equals I plus 1. It's just a little shorthand for an incrementer. If you don't increment this type of loop, and I keep staying at 1 because you didn't increase it to 2, you are going to get an infinite loop. It will run forever. Quoting my wife's favorite movie, forever. It will just, and I have killed my laptop running a process because I forgot it did lots of things, and I forgot to increment my while statement, and it blue screened to my PC after an hour. And then we have a break statement that you can break out of that loop if you want. I don't use it very often. So basically, these are the two looping capabilities that you can use. And I'm going to tell you right now, the other one is a for loop, which we're going to go over next. The if and the for are the most powerful ones that you're going to be using 95% of the time. While is good to have for certain things, but it's not really the greatest looping capability of Python. This is your #1 loop to go through data. You have all your data in a list. To go through all that data, basically you type in a for statement, which is for, you're now assigning X to, okay, we're just doing it to that string, but you can do it to fruits. And every time that loop, it'll know how long that list is. Every time it goes through that loop, it will pick, like the first time it runs through, X will be equal apple. Next time it runs through, it'll be banana. Next time it'll run through, it will be cherry. And then it'll go, whoop, there's nothing left in fruits. I'm out. It'll automatically go out of that loop. This is your bread and butter right there. And you will see that in my code quite a bit. It is the biggest looping capability. Remember, if is basically your selector or your query tool. This is your major looping tool that you're going to be going through to go through all your data to check. You know, you're going to go, okay, for X equal this list. And then the next line will be if X equals something, then do something. Because you're running through the loop and you're grabbing data out of it, and then you do your comparing or your querying or your if statement to grab it out. And this will come all more clear when we start going through the hands-on basically coding. And like I said, I'm sorry, we only got 4 hours. I wish it was an 8-hour class and we can go into a lot more depth with this. Don't worry about range. Now, another thing I use is classes. Classes, or we'll go functions next. Functions are very, very good to have. Functions will break out your code to separate parts. Say we want to create a file geodatabase, which we're going to do that. We're going to make a function called create file geodatabase. The reason you break it down to functions, and for the people who download or take their model builder and export to Python, you won't see functions. They do it all linear. But for coding and for your sense of mind, so you don't freak out trying to code a whole script at one time, you break it out into functions. A function always begins with DEF, which is really definition, but I like calling them function. And then you give it a name, and then you can also pass something into that function, we'll show later. But anytime I want to run print hello from a function on my code outside the function, you'll see this when we start programming, I call my function. And every time I call it, it will print this out. And this is really basic. We're going to show you what a function really can do and why it's so important, and it gives you the capability to reuse that code without retyping it every single time. You got this cool function that creates a file geodatabase, and say we give it a name and a location where we're going to build that file geodatabase, a directory. You can pass the name and the new location into that function, and it will create every file geodatabase you call every time you call that by giving it the name and the location of it. You don't have to write that whole code every single time you need a file geodatabase. And I know that's just an example of stuff, but you can reuse that code. And I know for people who haven't done any coding before, this could be a little bit over your head, but we're going to go over more explaining this when we start going into code. Basically, that's a function. And remember, it has to be indented because a function is a code block. And in that function, you can have for statements, you can have if statements, you can have anything you want in that. Then we're going to have something called class, which for your C# people, class is really a structure. Okay, a class. A class is like, say you got a car. Car, you can make a class of a car. What's your parts of your car? You got a wheels, you got an engine, steering wheel, doors. Okay, so basically, you would create a class called car, and inside that car, you will have separate parts. Right here, we did a person. A person has a name and an age. So, in that class or structure, we have, don't worry about self. Self just means it's part of that class. Don't want to go in depth of what self means. Just remember, it's part of that class. We're going to initialize the class. You're going to be using the same code over and over and over, so you don't even have to worry about typing this out every time because you'll have this snippet, how to build a class. The only thing you would be is changing what the parts of that class will be. And like I said, we're really going to go into this when we start doing some coding. So that person has a name. So a person is a name and has an age. And then basically we take a variable, we're going to call that P1. We're going to assign it this class, which is person. And we're going to say, okay, the person's name is John. And his age is 36. So we're passing John and age. And you can print it out like this. We're going to show you a different method. You can do it like this. You can say print P1, which is class, and whatever you named that thing in that class, which is name, and age. Remember, everything's case sensitive too. So it'll print out John and 36. You can do other things with it. You can add functions inside that class. Sorry, I don't do that. I use class as a data structure and I hold data in it. Like when I'm talking about data, say I have a feature and every field in that feature will be in my class. So when I grab each row, I make each row part of the class, that class, and I fill in like object ID, say an address, address number, address direction, address street, all the way down. And I have all that data in that row. So basically I'm using the class as the structure of that row. And I'll show you how to get the data out of it real easy. I know it's really coming down to a break. If you can hold off, we just got a couple of little things, and then we can take a 10-minute break if you want. But I think we're rolling, and if we stop, we might mess up a little bit. If that's okay with everybody. So like I said, I know I'm going really fast on this. I'm sorry, this is a short class. 4 hours is short. But I want to tell you, we will go over this, and I will really explain it and be able to grasp it better than this little primer. We're going to go into the most terrible thing that Esri does to dates. You will cuss this out. I won't tell you how many times. If you're using dates, and we're going to go over this in code. I've got a little snippet to show you how to do this. If you go into and use desktop, yeah, it's going to show you the proper date. But if you pull this data from a service or in SQL, it's going to give you a mess. It's going to give you what we call a timestamp, and it's not a true timestamp. It is a modified timestamp just for Esri. And a timestamp is what we call Unix timestamp. I'm going to give you a quick history. It is every second from, let's see, January 1 of 1970 to this second is a timestamp. But if you ever pulled in data in SQL and look at it, or you've had issues with using data, Esri's date time stuff or dates, you will see this. And we're just going to show you how right now, how to fix some of that. And you'll have this. Okay. Cool thing about comments, I didn't go over comments. Comments is a single or double hashtag or number sign. This can stop code from being run. This is where you put your comments, why I'm doing X, or anything like that. We're going to go over comments. You'll see it in my code everywhere. Comments are great, but comments will help you debug stuff. I'll show you in a second how I'm going to undo this. Now in Python, if we want the exact millisecond of when this thing runs, it will bring you back that data, which I'm going to show you. You have to import a module, which ArcPy is a module. We import something called date time. It's already built into Python. You don't have to import this one. And it is a chunk of code or an API for your programmers out there that is going to be using it. Basically, if we run this, I'm uncommenting that so we can run it. And let's clean down here. And I'm sorry, I'm going to do this. We run it. What'd I tell you? Year, month, day, hour, minute, second, millisecond. Okay. Esri does not like milliseconds. You cannot use milliseconds in their date fields. No problem. So we're going to do this. We'll just uncomment all this. Okay, let me explain what we're doing. We're bringing in date time right now. I'm going to print it out. Then we're going to turn that date time into a string using datetime.datetime.string time. We're going to make it month/day/year, make it real more intelligible. This is just going to print me a blank space in between, and then I'm going to print that. Booyah. This is September, I'm sorry, August 30th, 2011. With that, you can also do more than, you can go hours, minutes, and seconds with it. Now, to get rid of that milliseconds, we're going to have to, and I made it, you can see I made a function. So basically, let me go back up here. We're going to comment that out so we don't have to run it. We're going to go ahead and, well, I need the date. Sorry, let's fix that. Yep. We're going to get that date time again, which is X. We're going to call it, we're going to give it to that function called fixed date. Now let me explain what fixed date does. It's going to grab X. We're going to call it old data. We're going to make a string out of it, and we're grabbing 19 positions out of that string. Remember how I was telling you how to grab 19 things out of it? It's going to start at 0 and grab 19, which means it's going to grab everything up to the milliseconds, which we'll show you that when I print it out. And then remember, I'm calling that function. So I'm giving it the function name, and this one has a parameter. So I'm passing it X, which X is date time. So if you run it, if you look, we are now bringing, I should have printed out X. Sorry, my fault. I want to do a comparison. Let's clear the console. All right, this is what date time gave us with the milliseconds. We now made it into something Esri can use. We go down to the seconds. And you remember that first code right here, we went to just the year, day, and month. We didn't use any time. Now here we go. The only thing we have to do on this, we just comment that out so we don't have to use it. We can keep the function open because we'll never call it. All right, here's the fun thing. I'm going to comment all this out so we don't have to see this extra stuff that come up. All right, people, here we go. How many people have seen data come back from Esri for a date that looked like this? A big old number string, and it's not a true timestamp that the world knows what timestamp is. To fix this, it's real easy to fix. We do have to import another module. And listen, if you import modules that you don't need, there's no problem. We're going to import time. You're going to be using this code that I'm going to show you right here. You're going to have date time and time. You're going to be using this all the time to fix these Esri date things. What it's going to do, we're calling it fixed date. We're going to pass what we call the Esri date, which is this big old line. You don't have to give it a variable name. You just have to give data to that variable. What Esri does, they like to take their timestamp and multiply it by 1,000. So if you went to someplace on the web and looked at Unix timestamp and just copied that timestamp from Esri and put it in there, we're looking at probably year 2054 because they multiplied by 1,000. So the only thing you do, you take that timestamp and you divide it by 1,000. And I'm giving it that name, timestamp. So we're taking that big, long, nasty thing here, divide it by 1,000. And then we're going to go ahead and break it out to what a real true timestamp looks like by this. You don't have to remember this. This is in the code, and I'm going to return the date. So, and when I return it, it's going to print it right here. So if we run that, let's clean up the mess. And then we're going to take a break right after this. There you go. We took this nasty line of code here and we broke down to what it really means.
Skip, Jennifer.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Skip, Jennifer wants to know, why do they multiply it by 1,000?
It's just a proprietary junk. I'm sorry. I love Isri to death. I use it all the time, but it's something they like to throw in there. So it's their proprietary thing. They use it in their code for different things. I don't know exactly. Hit Jay about it. Make him tell you, Jay Fowler. But that's what they do. They multiply it by 1,000 and store it that way. It's something that they do when they interpret it in ArcMap or any Isri product, that they automatically translate it. And that's how they translate it right there. So we're going to go ahead and get a break here. If you got any questions, let me know. See if you can get the Dropbox. If you got a bad URL, try to use the URL that we posted in the chat here. You can talk to me, unmute yourself, talk to me or whatever. Well, let's take a 10-minute break, and I don't know, let's get back about 9:40. I know I should have had a break earlier, but I can keep on talking. I'm trying to get this all into 4 hours.
Sounds great. Okay, we'll see you back here at 9:40. Welcome back, everyone, from break. Skip's going to go ahead and get started again. And then we'll take another break around 11 o'clock.
All right, guys. I think I got everybody. You sent me an email and text about getting the Dropbox. Like I said, I do apologize. This list came to me. Joseph gave me this list Wednesday night, and I did everybody that was on that list. So I don't know how many students I've got now, or how many of you guys are taking this. At that time, it was close to 35. So
you have 71 participants.
Holy moly. Hey, hey, Rachel, if you're on board, do I get paid the same amount I got paid last time for this? Just joking. I don't get paid. I don't care about that. All right.
Yeah, still zero.
Still zero. Yeah. All right. Yeah, like I said, we were talking about earlier, looking at the code there. It's just Isri's proprietary way of doing their dates. I'm sorry. Now, if, like I said, you use an ArcMap or anything like that, it automatically translated. But I'm going to tell you right now, for us people that we're going to go into data, we're going to see this junk right here. We're going to see this big thing, and you're going to be using this little function. I can't tell you how many times. This is something that's in my snippets. This is something that if you're going to manipulate data, it's got any dates in it whatsoever, you're going to pull this bad boy up and use it. So we're just going to go over just a couple quick things of syntax that is very important and really cool. Now, most of you other people out there have programmed before. You've heard of try, escape, or try catch, or something like that. Naturally, Python has that too. For the people who don't really program that much or don't know anything about program, try catch means, hey, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, I'm going to catch the error. Because if you run your code, you saw I had some errors when we were forcibly making errors. Technically, that script will just crash and it just stops. With try catch, if it comes up to an error, you're catching that error, but the script will keep on running. So if you're trying to like geocode an address and it doesn't come up and you get an error because you try to do it and the address is not in there, it can crash the script if you don't catch that error. And you don't care about that one. You can do code after the except. Like, I tried this address, it didn't work, it gave me an error. Down here, okay, I'm gonna write to a CSV file called error address errors or whatever. So you can use that as part of your work. But try catch is really good because it, like I said, it captures your errors and doesn't kill your script. We'll show that more later. It's in my code. I always use try catch on lots of things if I don't forget to use it. Now, here's a little something that's really cool. We're going to show this a little bit more detail. This is just basic Python, how to find out directories and files in the directory, which I use that in my building a file geodatabase. All right. This is called PyODBC. This is a library that you're going to have to import. Well, really, you're going to what we call pip into your Python. This does not come with a standard Python installation. And I do have the file out there, how to do it. And let's see, it's not showing up on my list real quick. Which we will go into how to do that in just a few minutes. It's real easy to do. You have to do the command line. You don't have to be an administrator on your PC to install this because it's basically just loading that package now into Python that you can use. But a lot of people are here because they want to have the capability to update attributes of a feature other than shape and object ID using SQL, because that feature could be locked by somebody having it up in ArcMap or it's a service or something. And this is how you would do it in SQL, which I got code. I'll show you how to do that because we got a whole nice little chunk of code that does that, and it explains it more. And basically, you import it. You would import PyODBC, and then you make a connector, giving it the database name and, well, the server database name, username, and password, and you build a cursor for it. And then you just basically send it a query, you fetch all records, and you bring the data in. Or if the query is an update, you know, it's just a standard SQL, guys. You can use update, you can use delete. Hopefully you don't have to. You can use anything like that. If you want to truncate the table, you can say, if you got the rights to be able to truncate. Now remember, any of these features that you work with, that username and password, it has to have the rights to, if you're old school CRUD, we call it CRUD, but in today, it's going to have read, write, update, and insert. To be able to read, which means select, because you're going to be manipulating that data. And you have to have the SQL rights to do that, which you can use the SDE connector to say the owner of that data, that username and password. And basically, you do a query, we're grabbing records, you fetch them all, and you can print them out. Which, I know this is just a quick overview of it, but you'll see it in some of the code I've given you, and we're going to go over that code. So on my list, we're ready for break, but we already had that. All right, we're going to do enough of that syntax. Today, we got a little work through here. I'm going to pull it up on my side. You got the if you downloaded the Dropbox already, it's under the workshop directory, like that. What we're going to do in code is we're going to build a script. Remember, I told you this is an art form. Plus, don't try to build your whole script at one time because you're going to get so frustrated. We're going to build it from each part. We're going to build a file geodatabase. We're going to move data into that file geodatabase. We're going to clip data. We're going to add fields to that clip data. We're going to pull a CSV file that will update that new feature we built from the clip. And then we're going to build a new file geodatabase. Say, okay, the whole object is we got a client. This client wants every school and college that is in the city of Greensboro. Okay, we do not have a feature just saying all these clients in the city of Greensboro. So he wants a file geodatabase of this data. And what we're going to be doing is building that. We're going to build a file geodatabase. This code right here is going to be reused twice. But we're going to grab the data, and I'm not going to grab it from the SDE. I have another file geodatabase we're going to grab it from. We're going to clip it out, clip out all the cities and colleges from the city using the city limits. We're going to add a couple fields to it. We're going to put that data, we're going to update the colleges from a CSV file, which I'm going to show you what that is. We're going to make a new education. We're going to call it City Education File Geodatabase. And we're going to put these new features that we clipped out and added fields to into that file geodatabase. And hey, we're going to zip it up and have it ready for them to have. So give me just one second. We'll see what this is. Ah, that's the one that's really important. Under that directory, it says notes. We're going to go over how to install modules if you don't have them. And it's real easy. Real easy. And the ones we really want to install today or whenever is going to be PyODBC, use SQL, FPDF. Hey, create a PDF. Wouldn't you just blow your boss away that you create him a PDF report and it's not hard to do? Requests. This is how we're going to request stuff off the web, like services and stuff like that. But if you look at somebody else's code, say you want Google is your best friend, and they have something import and you script crash because you don't have that module or that library, you can just basically, most of you, if you're working with desktop, it will be wherever your desktop, you know, I got 10.8, so it'll be 10.8, and basically how to pip it in, which we'll go over this in just a few minutes. But I'm glad I remember I put it up there. So you won't be able to follow along unless you pip those already in. But I do have it under here that each thing under text, and let's show you what the MXD looks like. Everybody likes, GIS professional likes MXDs. And the bad thing about this is I'm remoting in, even though all my data is local, and I basically got my licenses reserved out for me. It does take a few minutes for catalog and desktop to come up for me. I usually do all my work, I'll remote it in on a server. All right, people. Here is our data. You see I symbolize it out. I'm not an analyst, I just do the best I can. I got all my schools, all my colleges and everything, and they got the city limits. Now, our vendor or the person we want to give this to wants everything inside our city limits. So I'm just giving you what the data looks like visually. So basically, for this first part, we got to import ArcPy. Okay. ArcPy is the ArcGIS library of Python that it's not the 3x, it's 2x. It's the one that comes with desktop, but it does come with Pro too. Now, ArcPy, if you got desktop basic, a lot of these, the tools that we're going to show are for editor and what's the new one they call it? I call it advanced. So if you can't use these tools in catalog, you cannot use these tools in Python unless you have that license. OS is a Python license or a Python module that deals with your operating system. It will help you find directories or folders. Sorry, I'm old school, I call directories. And this utility, these two, you don't have to worry about pipping in or loading because they're already there. All three of these are already there on this first module. They're automatically in Python. Now we're going to give our file geodatabase, these are what I call globals. Globals are outside your functions. These can be used anywhere in your script. Variables, we're going to explain what variables can do. You can have variables inside your definition or your function that only work inside that function. You cannot see them outside that function. Even if they're named the same thing as the outside one, if you don't make a reference to them, you can't use them. They'll treat them as a different variable. I know that's hard to grasp, but for me, you've got to remember, programming is an art. I love doing global variables because then I can use it anywhere in my script. And hey, I want to change my location. I'll just change it once and I change it. So basically, this is the location, the folder I'm going to put my file geodatabases in. For this part of the script, I'm going to call it hold. And then I give it the full path name. The R, it's hard to explain. If you don't use R in front of your string for Windows, you will have to put double slashes because that is an escape variable. Don't worry about that. We don't have time to go over all that. Just remember, it's always R, quote, quote, and the location. Just copy it. When you go to that directory under Windows, copy the top, and you got your directory where you're going to put stuff in. And then what you're going to call it, and that. Okay. Code is real simple. Since we are reusing this code, we're always going to give it the file location, the geodatabases location for which is the folder we're going to put it in, the name, and the full path. Why? And you can see my text. I always put commas, checking if the file geodatabase doesn't exist and create it. So first, we're checking to see if it's already been created. If it has, if it doesn't exist, see if not exists. So if it's not there, we're going to build it. And there's the ArcPy to build it. And you give the location and the name. Then, if it does exist, we're going to go to it using shell. Like I said, you can reuse this code every single time. And then, basically, we're going to delete it. Remove tree, which means tree in Python means you can't remove a directory. You can say remove directory, but if there's files in that directory or folder, it can't remove it. But if you do something like remove tree, means it's going to remove the folder and every file inside it, which file geodatabases have a ton of files inside it. If you ever looked at one through Windows. And then we're going to go ahead and create it. And then, remember I was telling you, try. We're going to try to run this code. If something happens, we're going to print down here in the console, hey, we have an issue. And I'm going to print out E, which is my error code. This is something you can just copy and paste in every one of your codes. It's going to tell me what my error is and basically tell me what my error is for it. It's hard. We don't have time to really explain what this means, but you can copy and paste this and put it in every bit of your code. So if you get an error, it's going to say error and explain what the error is. And then from that part, we call Remember, it's called create file geodatabase. We're calling, this is outside the code. This is in our main code area. We're going to call create, calling that function. Remember, we have three things we're passing in: a location, a name, and a path. The full path, which is, you remember, it's the full path and the name of the file geodatabase. So we're using the global variables. We're passing that in, the location, the name of the file geodatabase, and the path. The reason we're doing a location is to be able to see if it exists. And that's really good. Okay, the reason I do file geodatabases, you don't want to do your work on production. Many reasons. Why? It's because you don't want to keep calling SDE for your data. I'm telling you right now, it will slow down your work because you're depending on network. Another reason is you don't want to do all your development work on SDE. You don't want to touch those production, features that, or if it's production data sets that somebody else is using or anything. So we copy them over to a file geodatabase, and we can do anything we want with them. If we mess them up, oh well, because they're in our file geodatabase. And that's how you create the file geodatabase. I put the full ending code on here, so I'll show you what it looks like in code. And I can comment it out, what we don't use. So these are the extra files we're going to be using later. We're going to port CSV, and we're going to port zip files so we can make a zip. But remember, here's our data. Here's our globals. Now listen, guys, if you got any questions, you just hit me with it, okay? Please. So we just care about these. We care about this function right here. You remember that was what's in text. And what's cool is we're going to comment out everything. Now I do a lot of checks and stuff like down here, but we're only going to call the first one. So I'm going to comment any other calls to any other function right now. So we run that. We're creating a file geodatabase if it doesn't exist. I should have showed you directly. I am so sorry before we did this. I can rerun it. See, I always print. I'm creating a file geodatabase now. Woohoo! Where did I put it? See, that's another good thing about global. I can go up here and go, where did I put that file geodatabase? Oh, under workshop. Okay. Developers can be a little eccentric. Sorry, we can forget things. Okay. There it is. We created it at 10:01. And the fun part about it is, let's do this real quick. We'll rerun it. Pull that up real quick. You should see it disappear. If the code doesn't run too fast. You gotta remember, code can run fast. I'm deleting it, it's gone. Hey, where'd it go? Because it existed. We're cleaning, we're getting a clean slate to work with. Boom, there it is. File geodatabase, ready for us to work with. Okay. Now we got something we can play with. All right. We show that and built that. Well, let's move some data. Now, I do have a file geodatabase here that I call exercise, which you have. Everything you got is all in this. Instead of me trying to go over SDE and grab this, which you can, the same way, you just got to point to the SDE file with the username and password, or use you basically use your connection file. And me tie up the network, and me be on virtual like this, let's have it call it and pull it from here. So what we're going to be doing, we're calling a variable from and to. So from's coming from that exercise file geodatabase, and that's the feature. And we're going to put it into our work, which is hold, see hold, and we're going to put it into that file geodatabase, the 4 features that we needed. sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 features we needed. And basically, we're using the ArcPy tool, which is in, let's do this. If you didn't know, it might take a second for it to load, so I'll talk about it. This is the ArcPy call for that. Hey, it came up quick. Yes, I have a ton of connections. Let's go up to Tools, System Toolbox. I know you don't want to work fast. Manipulating data. I'm sorry, data management tools. And we're going to be using the feature copy. So we'll go to Features. I'm not going to do this for every tool because once you find out how to get the tools, you remember there's something called Copy Feature. You can open it up and you see all the little things here for it. Tool Help is your friend. Okay. If you're worked with Esri software as much as I have over the years, you know that their documentation is probably 80% correct. I think they have two divisions that does this. One, it develops the tools. The other one writes the help with it. And it's not always right, but most of the time it is. So here you'll get your Python code for it. So you can see it says copy feature. We need the feature that we're going to be copying to from or in, and then we're going to copy that out. And these are just extra options that you can use. Every single tool and catalog has help that will show you the Python code to do this. And they do give you examples down here how to do it. This is how to do a shapefile. But once, guys, this is the cool part about programming. Once you've done it and you know the code works, you save your code and reuse it. Okay, so this part, we're going to go ahead. I know I got all my code there. Now, we're going to uncomment this. But this thing runs fast. We're going to go ahead and create the database again, the file geodatabase, and we're going to move the data across. The reason, guys, that we're not going to go over every little bit of this, because I know a lot of people use Google to find stuff. Well, this is just the same thing. You're going to be using this code over and over and over again. And once you get it, you're always going to know, if I need to copy a feature somewhere, it's going to be ArcPy copy feature management. And I've got that in my snippets. From and to. That's the reason I named those variables like that. I'm going to be copying it from the exercise into hold, which is already there. And since I've already got it up, oh, no, I don't have it up. Let me explain something, guys, and you'll get this error. If you're running Python code and you happen to have catalog opened up on that file geodatabase, you'll get an error. It'll say already in use. So either close your catalog or make sure that you're not pointing to that file geodatabase. And I'm just going to say, if you get that error, you'll know exactly what happens. So right now, here's our whole file geodatabase. Make sure I put it in the right place. I'm looking at the wrong one, I think. Eh. Naturally, when you go with stuff like this, oh, I'm on the solutions. I am so sorry. Boom, boom. Let's take a look at it. Did it again, didn't I?
Workshop T.
There we go. We moved all that data in there. We built a file geodatabase, and we moved all our data into it. I need to get off of it because we're going to do some other stuff to it now. Now, for your analysts out there, we're now, the next part is we're going to clip out all we're going to grab it all. We're going to do a clip analysis on it, that tool and catalog. We're going to give what we want to clip out to what we're clipping and give it the new name. Okay? And we're going to clip that out and store it in the file geodatabase. So we're going to be storing that in hold under that name. So, and we have a try between each one to make sure everything works. And then I got an error that says, hey, you had a problem clipping out college polygons. So let's clear that. Everybody see the code okay? Can you make it bigger? So remember now, we're already calling create a file geodatabase. We're passing it the location, the name, and the full path of that file geodatabase. We're moving data from one file geodatabase to another, see, from the exercise database to hold, or it could be SDE to hold. Now, let's clip out the cities. Okay. That means it's going to call city, schools in city, which is up here, what we just showed. Schools and cities. Give me the file name and the in and the out for it. And we're using clip analysis. So we're bringing the school polygon in. We're going to use the city limits as our cutting cut, our cookie cutter, and we're going to call it out city school polygon. We're going to do that for all the features that we need to do it to. So we're going to run the script from the beginning again. And like I said, it's going to be quick. By the time I pull up this, it'll be done. And another thing, if you've got this thing scheduled, this is automation stuff too. Once you got this thing scheduled, it runs even faster than an IDE like this. Once you got your Python code right, and you put it in your task manager, it will run 10 times faster. I'm not joking. Naturally, IDE. See, the script's now finished. Let's go ahead and pull up catalog. It's going to take me longer to show you that we got it done than it does for the script to run naturally. All right. Oh, okay. I ran this yesterday. Make sure I got my locations right. Naturally, when you show stuff in presentations and everything else, Mr. Grimman likes to show up. I got no errors. Yeah, I did. I had an error on that. Clipping the polygon. Clipping all of them had an error. Okay. Why did we have an error? This is good because then we can find errors. Anybody can tell me what my error is? I don't have that. Global means you're pulling in data that's outside that function. That's why we have global variables up top. Yes, I plan to do this. No, I didn't. So, looks like I don't have a global variable to that. That's cool. We'll make one. So I already called it that.
Hey, Skip, can you explain one more time what
There it
global
is, right
means?
there. Make sure it's called city limits in my file geodatabase. Okay.
Can you repeat your question, please?
I was just asking if Skip could explain what global meant one more time.
Yes, I'm sorry. No problem. All right. We have variables out here that hold these string information. Our directory, a file geodatabase, and our file geodatabase location with the file geodatabase in it. These are outside of any function. So we call those global variables. That means you can type it in once and you'll never have to type it in again. And if you need to change something, you can change it right here. But to be able to use them in the function, like our move, you have to reference them. So the word we use is global right there, and we call what that variable is up here. You see? And then we'll bring that value in. If we don't use the word global and we just call it this, that's a new variable. So don't need that. I don't know why it didn't clip. Maybe I don't have the right license. Let's try it again. Like I said, I'm sorry, I'm working on a remote server, a remote. This is good because you're going to have errors. You're not going to be typing in perfect code. I don't type in perfect code. Okay, so we do have an error with that, so we can't find. I printed out the error, the code. Am I drawing on that? How do I
Skip, do
fix
you
that?
have annotation turned on or no?
I don't know.
Okay, somebody is annotating. Hang on one second. Okay.
Okay. So we know we're probably got an issue. We got the right data, the college, city college polygon and the college polygon, and had a problem error finding it. So let's print this variable here and make sure that it's set right. Since we are printing the other ones out or printing out the thing, and I'm pretty sure everything is copacetic with college polygon and city college polygon. So everything's right with that. Might be this problem with the, it shouldn't be. That's perfect right there. The only thing I could think of is I don't have the right license with me today. I should have used this. Sorry, guys. Let's see what the error says to us. Okay. Guys, you're going to be doing this quite a bit. And in a way, it's good that I do have an error. Then we can show you how to fix errors. Invalid parameters. My parameters look right to me. Let's go check. Clip, clip, clip out. That's what they show here. Make sure I spelled it right. Clip analysis. And we're going to run a debug tool. Run debug. Run slower, but we can check and make sure we got everything. It stops. When you put a breakpoint, it will stop there and you can look at the variable. And you can see it automatically puts in the double slashes for you. I see what I did wrong. No? Okay.
Hey, Skip, there's a suggestion in the chat.
What's that?
It says, looks like it's in catalog in C. If you want to look what Elizabeth is saying.
Catalog what?
If you open chat, you should be able to see the comment that she put in there. And somebody has annotating turned on. If you, if that's you, if you'll go up to the little red X and turn annotation off, that would be great. Did you see Elizabeth's comment, Skip?
I sure did.
Okay.
Say it was under the. Well, see, that's where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be under C, Python, and the file geodatabase.
Skip, in the printout, it looks like you misspelled a workshop. It's copying C Python workshopped.
Oh, okay, I see what you're talking about. You're talking about.
In your PyScripter interpreter, down at the bottom, it's showing you misspelled workshop. You added a T on the end.
Did I? You mean in my code or my top?
I'm seeing the error in your Python interpreter window down at the bottom of the screen.
It's in the code also.
Yeah, so it would be in the code if it's in the
You
code.
scrolled past it a couple times.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. Thank you. Well, no, I'm copying it. Yeah, I see what you're talking about now. Where did you put a T in there for? Is this the path? And so I'm using global variables, so it should be your. I see. I'm trying to find out where the T is. Must be up here where I screwed up. Thank you very much. Boom. I'm no expert. I'm pretty good at this stuff, but I'm no expert. Uh-oh. I'll make sure I'm off of that so I don't have to crash on me. We're putting that into primary is not valid. Crap, guys, I'm really sorry. History sometimes has this issue about moving stuff across, but I've never seen it like this before. Scroll polygon, scroll polygon. Symbols does not exist, it's sitting right there. Let's make sure it's not a catalog issue. And let's make sure that we're doing it right. In schools, which is the school polygon. Oh, it's the clip, sorry. We know the clip worked. Okay. No, we didn't know the clip worked, that's right. In, clip, out. We know the clip's right. Everything else should be right. God, I'm old.
Honestly, this is the truth in scripting, though.
It is. And even though I ran this thing last night and the night before and it all worked, I do not know why it's doing this to me right now.
You're just giving real world example.
Camera's not valid. Yeah, it is.
Actually, you'd find the error after lunch in real world.
Yeah. Oh. Guys, it has nothing to do with that. Well. Oh. Because it's saying my zip. We're not into zip yet. I know what I forgot to do. They were. This was happening when you use the full script when you do stuff. Sorry. I know this thing works. I'm trying to explain it piece by piece. What it is saying, okay, these variables right here, I think, are not not associated yet. No. Dang it. We're not using zip yet. Where does it have it in my zip? I'm not calling zip yet. I'm not calling it anywhere. All right. I don't want to take up too much time. We got some other cool things to look at. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I am so sorry. I will have that fixed and send it to everybody. We don't want to waste time on this. It might take a few minutes to debug it. All right, let's go to another real world thing. Let's do the wonderful tasks of geocoding. This is going to give you an example of how to open up a CSV file, how to write to a CSV file, and the CSV file is going to have nothing in it but addresses. You look right here, we have a CSV of addresses. Boom. Nothing but addresses. And we have a header in the CSV file called addresses. And we got over 500 addresses. All right. You can geocode many different ways. But for this, what we're going to do is open. This is how you open a CSV file. Give it the file name and location where it's located. And then call it whatever you want to call it. And then we watch out for, the delimiter is a comma, so it's a comma delimited file, CSV file. Okay, we have a header in there. We don't want the header data. So basically, we're going to start a line count as 0. And then we're going to go through each one of those rows in the CSV file. 4 rows, remember? That's why 4 is the greatest thing in the world in CSV Reader, which Reader is going to read the whole file. If line count is 0, we're going to just give line count 1. Line count 0, the 0 of that line will be the header, and we don't want the header. Then it's going to run again because the first one is 0. We're making sure we knock it up to 1. And then it's going to come back again. Is it now 0? No. We're going to do else. That's your query. if we're going to grab addresses, all the addresses from that row, which is the only thing that was in it, is that one position, which was the address. We're going to make sure we strip out any spaces in the beginning and the end. And then we're going to put it in a string called, or not string, a list or an array called addresses, global, so we can use it somewhere else. And you see, we brought in where the file is located, right here. There's where the files are located. So we brought that in. We referenced those because they're global. There's the file name with the full path. And that's as easy so you can change it later to another file name. Then we're going to skip the first line because it's a header. We're going to bring addresses in and we're going to put it into a list, which would be like address 1, address 2, all the way across, kind of like apples. You remember that? Apples and everything across. It's going to bring all those in. And we can also do this real quick. Make sure I'm on the outside of it. We can go and show that list when it's fully loaded. Now with this interpreter, sometimes it just brings back the address, the encode, the machine code, where it's located. Sometimes it will print the whole thing out for you. Since this is a simple list, it should print it out. So let's get the CSV data. The other one I just did too fancy, sorry. See how quick that was? And that's all 500 and some addresses. So what we did right there, we didn't do anything but open that little teeny tiny CSV file of addresses right there. Booyah. And you can see there's quite a few in there. And we brought the data in and we're holding it. We're holding it under this list called M address list, or M address array, or I always call it like that, but it's a list. So now here's the fun part. We're going to use the web geocoder. We're going to use our city's geocoder to geocode our rest. This is where it becomes fun. Trust me. We're going to go to our REST endpoint. Now, has everybody ever been to REST endpoints before? Okay. Cool thing about REST endpoints, guys. You ready for this? You know, it gives you all the list of everything that's in that feature or that REST endpoint, what the type it is, and the length. So we're going to query something. We're going to query. I should have had this thing open so I can just grab one. Sorry. Oops. Let's open the sucker up again. Let's grab the first one. All right, we're going to hack our geocoding service. White hat hacking. Stuff that you can use that is not illegal. We're going to use a single line. See, we had spaces in it. Get rid of the space. Now, guys, watch this. Change this to JSON. And you see it brings back the XY for it and the score is 100%. But if you use get, you get to see the code, guys. You get to see the code that it uses to get it.
Hey,
Oh, yeah.
Skip, 2 questions.
Yep.
1, can you increase the text? And then
I don't think I can
2,
use text. I'm
okay.
so sorry.
And then the other one is
yes.
this geocoder code in the Dropbox folder, which we do have to work on that. Okay, cool. It will be,
I'll have
Ben.
to sensitize it a little bit. But okay, you can see it brought that back. And we used single line address, and we're going to use a JSON, and we'll use get, which will bring back this URL, and it fills in the query for you. So this is somebody who's never queried a REST endpoint before. It gives you all this stuff back. You can use that whole script, that whole URL if you want, but anywhere it has like source country equals and nothing there, you can cut it out. So I'll just show you what it looks like in the code, what I cut out. Right now, we have a URL. Remember, here's the fun part. We're writing a CSV this time. We're going to be writing a geocode CSV. We're using the same way of getting your CSV. You open it up, but this time we're using RB to write, and up here we used basically just open it, because then we just basically grabbing stuff. RB means you can write and it will rewrite it. So every time you write this code, it will rewrite that file. We're giving it our own header. And then we're looping through. You remember that list right here of all this good stuff? Of our addresses that we brought from the CSV file? We're bringing that in. We're setting some preliminary just in case it doesn't match. Then we got our URL that we copied out of there. But then where it says single line, the address that you just did will be in there. We are basically concatenating each address in that one location. So we're ending the text, the string, right there. We're adding a plus. We're concatenating one of these addresses down here, concatenating back to that string, and finishing the string out. And add all the extra stuff after this, you do got to have range equals true. Or you can use that whole URL. There's no problem. We're going to be using something called REST. This is something that you'll have to pip in, because Python does not completely have that. This right here, fancy thing, just means it's getting rid of any certificate warnings. Certificate warnings means you're using HTTPS and it doesn't recognize the certificate with the national certificate holders. Don't even worry about it. This is something you just add to your code, so you get this little warning. You get rid of that warning. You get down there. So what we're going to do, we go through each address. We're going to set our variables to nothing, just in case nothing comes back. We're going to go ahead and build our URL that we took from our little query here. Here, we replaced the city, the address, which shows up right here. We got a single line address right here. I know it's hard to see this. I am so sorry. But there's our single line address that we used. We're going to replace that in that string with our address that we're yanking out with the for statement. Then we're going to make a response for it. We're going to call request, and we're going to get, just like we did with the service query tool. We're getting it with that URL. We're going to return the data, in JSON. JSON just means JavaScript, oh great, JavaScript object notation, which is just a form of data. It's like XML. And if you see here, we're looking for X, Y, and score, which belongs to candidates. And then it belongs to location. And that's the address we use. We really don't care about that. You will have this code, don't worry. And every geocoder that I know of, even the ones on HOL, are formatted. JSON will be formatted exactly like this. So the code I'm giving you will work on any geocoder that you have. So remember, candidates, location, just like we showed here. Candidates, location, and we want the X and we want the Y, because we're going to put X, Y there. And then candidates, score. We want to know what this thing scored. Did it score 70%? Did it score 100%? And then naturally we got an error. It catches the error for us. And we're putting that data here. Show you why in a second. We need to go ahead, and what I'm doing here, I'm now writing that to a CSV file. I'm getting rid, DEL means delete response, delete data, because you need to clean up every time this thing runs. If you're running 30,000 addresses, which I've done, it will hold so much memory, it will about kill your PC. This gets rid of that memory hold of where that data, what's in data and what's in response. Now, here we go, guys. Here's a class. We're calling it address. This will be your basics of every class you build. This is a structure. I like using Q in front of my name because then I know that's what I'm pulling in from the outside. And this is how I'm going to reference that data in that class by these names. Remember, self is just part of self, which is part of the class. Don't even worry about that. But every class you write will look just like this. It might have a lot more of these and a lot more of these, but that is the class, and that is a saving grace. I don't have to have it to write the CSV because it's part of that loop. You come down, it's part of that loop. I'm writing that line to the CSV writer, feature writer, row, DA, X, Y, score. And you've got to remember it's in double square brackets, just like your header will be. And it just writes it. The reason I'm capturing it is later on. You can see I have my class here. I am passing the data, these data in here, which was up here. I could use the same, I could use this X, Y, score, and data and put it down here. But I want to show you that how I do this, I keep everything symmetrically. You can see that I'm using the same input names that I use in my class. Then I'm taking that class and I'm putting it into a list or an array. So when this is all done, I'll have over 500 classes with this data in it in this array. You don't need it to do the CSV, but it will be prevalent later. Now this does take a couple minutes because we're doing so many, but I should have read that print statement. We're going to have trash. Oh, I did get rid of it. Good. Right now, it's geocoding. It's going out to the web, hitting that URL for the geocoder, using that URL like we did when we copied from what our result was, putting that address in that string, and using that string to call the geocoder to get those addresses. The reason you might probably want to do something like this, because you can automate it. Just change the address, CSV file to whatever addresses you want to geocode, and boom, you can have this thing run anytime you want to run, task manager or whatever, to be able to geocode those addresses. Now you're like, well, why do I really need a CSV file with the XY in it and the score? I don't know, you might need it, you might not need it. But we're going to take this one step further after this thing finishes geocoding. Give it about another 30 seconds or more. Like I said, I shouldn't have had 500 and some in there, but I want to show that you can do a lot. Any questions while this is running? So basically we are hacking, not really hacking, we're querying this feature. Now, guess what, guys? Whatever you type in here will show up on that query string. And you just have to change these values out to what value you want. By what? Stopping the string, your string, putting a concatenate or plus, and putting what string you want to put in it, or what value, and then concatenating it back to that regular URL. But this is how we're going to do a service in a few minutes. This is how we can get our geocoder to work for us outside of ArcPy, and it runs faster. Anytime, believe it or not, you want to run Python on something like changing attributes or anything like that, you don't want to use ArcPy if you don't have to, because it makes it at least 10 times slower, because then you have to pull in their API, run it the way they want their API to run. If you just do this code, and it's done, is nothing but standard Python. And we're, like I said, we're looking at, we built a CSV. We are now calling it addresses, geocoded. So now we got the address, we got the XY, and we got the score. Now, guys, I cheated. I grabbed this out of our address feature, and I knew everything was going to score 100. But you can put code in there to say, hey, if score is less than 70, I don't want it, because it's probably not going to be a good address. And then you can write that out to another another CSV file saying these addresses didn't need geocode. But you can see CSV files are really cool and really fast to run. What took a while is I ran 500 and some requests to grab the data to get the XY and the score. Now let's take it even funner. We're going to take this data and we're going to insert it into a feature. Now, remember, guys, we want this. Okay, this is going to be a different one. Sorry. We go ahead and build that feature first. You got to do it first, because we're going to do an insert. Building a feature through Python and ArcPy is really, really difficult. I don't even do that. I don't like doing that because it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't just work that good that way. So right now, we're going to have an addressing file geodatabase. We have a feature. Guess what, guys? Nothing in it. And when I built it as a point. I used address, X, Y, and the score. That's all I did. Okay? So we're going to grab the data. we're going to truncate, which means clear out that feature, which is called address file geodatabase, which remember we've got it up here in global that we can change it anytime we want, right here. And I know this one's right, guys. This ain't gonna crash because I wrote this Saturday night and I know it works. So basically, we're gonna truncate that feature, make sure it's clean, so it's new every time we do it. There's truncate. Then we're grabbing the fields that we're gonna insert. We're gonna insert into address, X, Y, score, and the shape. And that's what you use for shape for ISRI, for a point. Now, I've never done polygons and never done lines. I've always done points. And then we're going to use ArcPy DA, means data access, insert cursor. This is in your Python snippets I gave you. You give it the location, which is the full address of that file geodatabase, including the name of the feature and the fields. Then, you remember your friend, 4. We're going to loop through that list of all the classes we built, all 500 of them, and assign each class to DA, because it's for each one of these. We're going to give it to that. Then we're going to go ahead and create a point. And you remember, in your class, your name of your XY is XY chord, X chord, Y chord. And DA is the name of your class. So it'll be DA dot X chord, DA dot Y chord. We're giving it the reference of State Plain, North Carolina. And then we're going to insert it. So then we're going to basically DA, which means it's that class of address, DA X chord, DA Y chord, score, and our brand new point, which will get created every time it loops through our list. And then it's going to create that feature for us. So I'm going to clean this up so we don't get a print statement. Oh, it's above. That's where we got the data. Go ahead, print some error. Let's print error. I probably didn't clean it. Probably got rid of the print. Okay, here we go. Now, okay, guys, time to talk. Got any questions? I know this is really, really advanced for people who had never done this before. But the thing is, once you've done it, you've got that code and you can do many times. And if you don't understand it, there is explanations out there about what REST does and everything. But like I said, this is why it needs to be an 8-hour class. But the cool thing is, like I said, you're just copying that URL, changing that one line street. Remember, single line. You're cutting it, you're putting it where you want your address to be, and then you're bringing it back. And you remember, 4 is your friend, because this is where we had a list of all those addresses that we got from the CSV, and we're grabbing each one of them. And we're using requests to get that URL, getting that data back, which was that JSON that we saw. This. And then we're dissecting that JSON, which I know this is really confusing, but it's always going to be like this for a geocoder. Grabbing that data. I'm assigning it because I'm doing a class with it, but then I'm writing that data out to a CSV. It's done while I was talking. Sorry.
Skip, Ben has a couple of questions for you in the chat. One is the geocoder REST service in this example free/open access? And then if not, does anyone know of free or open geocoder services?
I don't know why my catalog does this every way. Oh, there's tons of them. Most every geocoder that people have. I'm going to show you something a little later that's going to be really, really cool about it. We'll just open my MXD up. Yes, this geocoder is free to use. We have vendors hitting this all the time. This is open for anybody. And technically, if the rest is open, that you can see it, that means it's public. I'm not using a username, password. I'm not getting a token or anything. You know what I did, guys? You're gonna hate me. I forgot to turn that on. I'm sorry. It's hard to break code down after you got it all written if you want to break it down into different sections. So we got to run it again. Okay, yes. The next example we're going to show, we're going to use REST again, but we're not going to use it against a geocoder. I'm going to show you basically how you can scrape a feature service for data. We have a vendor that does that every week on us, but I'm going to show you how you can get data from a feature service.
A couple more questions came in, Skip.
What's that?
Jennifer Conley wants to know how do we get it, which I'm assuming she's talking about the geocoder services. Okay. And then Catherine wants to know what impact lag does that cause on your server?
None at all. Because it's just a process, it's a service. Yeah, it's going to do just a tad. This is running off your ArcGIS server. And if you don't have that, if you got that service out there and it can't run it, then your ArcGIS server needs some work done on it. This is something that you basically, okay, say our AGL account, our ArcGIS Online account. We don't use the ArcGIS Online geocoders for us. We pull these geocoders into ArcGIS Online. So these geocoders get used all the time for anybody using ArcGIS Online under the city. So I'm saying it doesn't give it that much impact at all. Like I said, it doesn't put a strain on your ArcGIS server. It will put more of a strain on your SDE or when you use it in ArcMap or Pro to basically run this geocoding than it does on the service. Because services are trained to take less resources than ArcMap or ArcPro. So this time I wasn't stupid and I got the points to show. Come on, come on, come on.
Tell me what you forgot to turn on.
I forgot to turn on making the points.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I am so sorry, guys. I forgot that. I like to show different parts of it, and I'm like, "Where's my points at?" And I'm like, "Dang, Skip, you're stupid." All right, guys. There's my brand new feature. Remember, I called it address geocoding or addressing. I called it addresses. I made that. You remember, I went in there, made a file geodatabase, created a point called addresses, and we made that table, had all that in there. Remember, I made a point feature, so it automatically created object ID and shape. I created an address feature, address field, XY fields, and a score field. And then what I did from that was, I know it's hard to see, guys, I'm sorry. I now put all those geocoded points into that feature. And now I have a new feature called address on the file geodatabase of all the addresses I just geocoded. Why you want to do that? I don't know. But listen, I'm trying to give you ideas of things. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you ideas of what you can do with Python. Now, this is going, you're going to laugh. People know me. I used to work for MapSite. Joseph and I are still friends. Everybody at MapSite and I are friends. We all left on good terms. So don't worry about that. I am going to take one of their features. We're going to go, and you said, you know, this one we did was Greensboro. Okay, hello Greensboro, which is fine. You want to use our geocoder? I don't care, and we really don't care. But now, we are now going to go to map for size REST endpoints.
Catherine has a question. She says, what happens when you have multiple candidates for the same address?
That's why you want to put, that's the reason you're smart. You're really smart because you can't have multiple candidates. So what you do with that is when you bring back your score, remember when you get your score up here, here's your score. You would put something like, if score is less than what, 70? Then we take all this code here, move it over so we can indent. Remember, it got to indent. That's a code block. See my error? That red line? That means we don't touch it. So if the score, I'm sorry, it's score less than 70. Look at me. Or okay, let's do that, less than 100. So if anything didn't score less than 100, we don't use it. And then you can also put it down here that you can be writing, you can have two CSV files open at the same time. You can write another CSV file. Instead of calling it feature, you can say geocoder not, or address not located, or not geocoded, and write out the same information. So if it's under 100, you can write to that file, to that CSV file, and then show everyone that didn't get geocoded at 100%. Did that help? Killer. So basically that's how you work. That's why once you bring the data in, you can do anything you want with that data. That's the cool part about Python. You can do anything you want with that data. Once you bring it in, and that's the reason I bring it into a class and then a list of classes. Because once it's put in here and put into my list, I've got that data through that whole script. And I can do anything I want with it. I can make new features with it. I can add data to it. I can do anything I want to it. That's why Python is so cool. Other than Python is so cool because you can automate it. You're automating stuff. Now, let's get into.
Hey, Skip, do we want to take another 5-minute quick break, or do we want to push on through for another?
Guys, if we can push through, I'll have plenty of time more for questions because this thing's over at 12.
Awesome.
This will be quicker because it's doing the same thing basically. And then I want to show you how you can use SQL to write. I got to at least show you how to use SQL to update an attributes in a feature while that feature is open. Can we push through?
I don't see any objections coming in. Yep, keep going.
I am so sorry, guys. Like I said, I wish this was a longer class, and I'm trying to rush, and I have mistakes because I'm rushing, and I'm not making excuses. I am so sorry. All right. Basically, we went to Map for Site, went to their REST endpoint services, And hey, we want to look at the communication towers. Now, naturally, we're not going to hit the mapping service. That's where they're doing their editing. All right. What's cool, remember, we want to go down to the feature itself. We have all the attributes that belong to that feature. So if we want to make a new feature for this, for us, we've got all the attributes and all the types and all the sizes. And you can remember, look at this, 255, 254, even on little things, 50. You remember? And it's going to put spaces all on that. I'm just letting you know that. All right, guys, you ready? This is a little trick if you don't know it. You ready? On any service, you can type 1 equals 1. And then fields out. Let's give it a star. We're going to bring back every field and of every one of those features. Now, the thing is, we also need to remember one thing too. Limitations. Okay? Most services default is you go and bring back 1,000 records at a time. To fix that, or to figure out how many records you got, Esri finally, in the newer versions of this, you can say 1 equals 1. We're not going to return geometry, but they brought something back. It's so cool that you can bring back nothing but count. How many records are in that count, or in that feature, in this service? And you don't have to change that to JSON yet, because you want to know. Boom. We got 172 features in that service, or 172 rows if your database guy. So now I'm going to unclick that. We want to bring geometry back, and we want all the rows. Go down here. Remember, you want JSON. And this is going to look nasty, but don't worry about it. Let me just show you. It's bringing back every single feature. It's telling you what each name is, alias name, and then it's going to start going through the attributes. I've got it already mapped out that you'll never have to worry about wanting to serve through this stuff. It gets kind of difficult sometimes. But we can see our data in here. Now, I did the same thing I did for addresses. When I geolocated, I made a feature out of this already. Why? Because I already had a roadmap when I looked at the service. I knew what every field name will be and how long it would be. So we go back to our code. Remember, I copied that URL out. We're going to go up here. Look at, here we go. We're going to requests. This is to get rid of that nasty. I had to have ArcPy because I'm making points, and I have to have a CSV because I am writing this out to a CSV. I've got my services. My class is called service. So I have a service list, and then I have a URL, or I mean, not the URL, but my location in my file geodatabase. Because I am not going to do this and the feature in my file geodatabase. Naturally, I'm not going to do this on production. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to grab my data to my REST. I'm also going to write to my CSV file. Here is my header. This is all the data I'm getting from that REST. I trimmed that script down, and you can trim this down on yours too, because you'll get this code. I don't know if it's up there yet, but I will put it up. I will put it up there. I thought I did last night. And I'm putting it, basically I'm grabbing everything, so I don't have to put anything in there. Because why? My query is 1, and that's the basically the URL's conversion of equals 1, and I'm grabbing all the fields. So then I am posting it because I don't have to use a get, because I don't care if anybody sees what I'm doing. And I'm also making sure that I don't have to worry about my certificate. I'm getting the data just like I did last time. And then I'm going through that data. Remember, I got it in data from my response. I made it JSON. Features, data, and I'm looking for features. And then inside features, right there. Oh. Where you at?
Catherine asked, do you have to write the CSV header file in the same order as the existing REST feature service?
No, I mean, no, you don't have to even do a CSV file if you don't want. But you want to do the header before you start putting data into it. And if you look at it, the code, I'm doing that. The header is written. Okay, you got a with statement. So you open that file. I'm doing the header. I'm doing the URL, but I'm not interpreting that data into another loop inside this. So this only gets written once. And then I'm going to the features part of that JSON. Then I'm going to take that features, I'm going to the attributes. And then what do you think of what's attributes? Object ID, F1, registration. I guess this is built off a shapefile because it's all been trimmed. This is something you can put in your little tool bag. If it's not ASCII, Python does not like it. This will ignore any weird characters. Like, you've seen weird characters before in data. This is really good to have, and it's just something you add to any like text fields that you can add, just in case it's got some weird looking data in it. Then I'm writing that header out, because these are the names I'm using to grab that data and assign it to these variables. And I'm writing it out, and I'm looking through it. And I'm getting rid of my sponge so I don't have to hold it that much. But you got to remember, guys, I am putting this into a CSV file there. Now, for this, I'm playing a little trick. Okay, guys, this is just showing the power. I wrote a CSV file. Good. I'm going to open that CSV file up now that I just wrote. Grab all the data from it. A CSV file is like a database, a record in a database. The first row, which row would be the first row in that feature or that table, 0 is the 0 position, which will be the first thing in front of that comma. Next position, next position. The comma's delimiting all this. I'll bring that all into my class called service, and then I'm making my list to hold it. Why do I want to do that? I mean, I could have done it up here and while this was building, but I want to show the ability that you can read in a CSV file and put it into a class and into an array. And then here, I wrote a little fun thing that will print this all out and show you what it looks like. And then I'm making a point out of it, guys. There's my class, same structure, just added more fields into it. And this is where I call everything. So we're running a little quick on time. I'm just going to run the whole thing again. Anybody have any questions? This is going to run fast. It's not like geocoding. Really, any questions? The cool thing about it is, guys, you can go to the REST service and say, like we said here, I want every bit of that data. I know it's under 1,000 because I used count. Play with this, guys. Remember the little trick. 1 = 1 will bring everything back for you. Okay? That's a database trick. Anything. You can use that in SQL, where 1 = 1 will bring everything back that you want. Okay? And I built a feature out of that, just like I built the address feature, because I already knew what that variable, that field was going to be called. That field, field is going to be called, what type it is, and how big it is. And I got it in my class, and now I'm bringing it in. I'm sorry, I'm printing it out there just to have fun. But then I'm bringing in my location morphology database and my feature name. It's all together there. And then I'm bringing my array of that class. I'm truncating it, so it's going to be a brand new feature. Here's the fields that I'm inserting into. I'm using the insert cursor, my file geodatabase feature, the fields, and then I'm looping through all those classes to get the data. Remember, four is your best friend. Point, creating a point for it, and then I'm inserting it. And then I'm deleting the cursor every time I'm running. Well, I'm deleting the cursor at the end. Delete your cursor so you don't hold anything connections to it. And that's it. And guys, you got to tell me when I don't do this. And you see, I comment everything. I mean, I want you to learn this. I comment everything. And I comment from me too. If you look, I get, PyScripter gives you this ability to build this thing real quick. I always put down what the name it is, what it does, who I created it, when I created it, when I revised it, and I always put copyright on there, which is not true. There's no copyright. I'm a government employee. The reason I use revised, because I make it a habit to at least every 6 months to go through all my scripts and see if I can fix them, make them work better. And then I change the revised date and save it. And that just helps me know that I am, see, comment everything. And that's for me, because I'll forget how to do this. I'll pull the script and go, oh, there, that's what I did. Yeah, look at that. Come on, Skip, don't be so stupid. And I'll remember how to do it all. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to run the whole script. Remember, I have a print feature in there. I'm printing that whole thing because I'm looping through, just showing you that you can loop through and concatenating stuff and putting everything in. Here's what it says. I'm getting the data from the CSV. I already wrote it. I already got the data from the service, wrote it. I'm getting the data from the CSV file, and I printed it all out just to show you. See, here's the format I wrote it. Object ID, that, all the way through. Now, we can sit here and open up my little MXD. Oh, here's what it created. You can see this. Oh, you probably want to see it in Excel. Be careful opening CSVs up with Excel and saving them, because Excel has the ability to screw your data up, especially dates and numbers. You can see, here's my CSV. I grabbed the object ID that came from the service, F1, and all the different file names, and put the data in there. This is a WGS Mercator, so it had lat long in it, and basically I made it a Mercator feature. And that wasn't there before. Now, we open my MXD up. I'm not stealing anything. You know you can pull this service in with Arc Pro or even ArcMap. Come on, map. There you go. And guys, I'm not going to tell you, they weren't in there, because remember I truncated that. Here's their features that I made a feature out of it. Out of using map for sites, tower locations. And then there's your data. I know I'm going fast. I'm sorry. We're running out of time on stuff.
Skip, how long does it take you to? How long does it take for you to write something like this?
You know how long it took me to write that? You ready? An hour. Why? What did I tell you about snippets, guys? Anything you write something that's really cool that you know you're going to be reusing, save that little bit of code as a text file. All right? Do you think I sat there and I admit I wrote this one by hand, but do you think I wrote, after I figured this out right here, Am I doing the right one? Yes. Do you think, come on. Do you think I try to figure this out again? Sorry, some reason things are slowing up. How to dissect that JSON, or how to do, come on, how to do this URL? No, guys, I already remembered how to do this. Technically, guys, the only thing you have to change is your REST endpoint, your feature name, and that REST endpoint, and or just run it like I did. I didn't have to add anything to that REST to that URL to get all that data. And guys, listen, once this is dissected, not at least 90% of all your features will be Esri features. I'm talking about Esri, not WMS or anything like that. Will be formatted exactly like this. It's just different names. So guys, you don't think I sat there and wrote this? I copied this out from a snippet I had. Really, I copied from another feature. I mean, another script. So once you write something that's really, really cool, that you know you're going to be using somewhere else, that you just have to modify the names, you save it. Why try to remember how to do this when you can save it? Or open that script up again and go, yeah, I need this part, need this part, need this part. And you might have to tweak it, but not much. And then here's how you write a CSV file. Remember, you just open it. Oh, sorry, this is how you read it. You open it, you can type in the exact location with the name in here under double quotes. You don't have to have a variable that does that. And you make sure it's, say, comma delimited. You just copy this code right here. Remember, if it has a header, you got to skip the header because you don't want that in your code. And then you read it. And you remember, you're reading each row. So, you can have like this many things with a common delimited, each one of these in each row. You're using your favorite friend for each row, which the row, it reads one row at a time. CSV Reader reads everything, and then it has everything in one thing. You want each row from that reader. I don't want the header, so I skip it. And then I know this is data I want. And like I said, I'm reading it, I'm putting it into my class, which is the same format as this, the names, and then I'm putting it in a list so I can go through that whole class, a list of classes. And to write a CSV, you can see this code's not big. Get data from REST. CSV writer, boom, WB. That means it'll rewrite it. It also can write binary. And I'm starting it, I'm calling it feature writer. It's a CSV writer. I'm calling it feature, delimited by a comma. Here's my header. And then I'm querying it, bringing back all my data. And then you got to put it in square brackets, just like you do your header. I'm writing my data out, my CSV. What do you think, guys? CSVs could be your friend. And then I love taking it to the extra spot, like, hey, let's make a point feature out of this. And guys, here it is for point. Now, I don't do polygons, I don't do lines. Points are the most important thing for me because point holds more data than polygons sometimes. Polygons, you can grab all the attributes and don't worry about the shape. Now, you can look through Esri's code and figure out how to do a point. But, what's that, 3 days? And I'll give up. Don't give up. And then remember, this is Mercator. So I create a point, and then I add it to my insert row. And I create each rows. Cool? Let's go into the sequel. Booyah. All right, guys, I don't care if you see my username password, but guess what? because this is running off my personal SDE I have my developer's license actually. I run my own ArcGIS server. I run my own portal off my laptop because, I mean, we do have staging servers for our enterprise, but I still run it off of mine too. So this is me creating, remember I'm porting PyODBC, which you have to pip it. You have to bring that package into your Python. And basically, I'm connecting to my database. That's my connection. I'm making it global so I can use it everywhere. Here's my different CSV files, which holds weather and rain. Here, I'm opening a CSV file out. Remember, opening it. I'm just reading it now. You can use RB, or you don't have to have anything in there because it defaults to read. I'm reading a row, grabbing what the station is, station number, the temperature and rainfall. I'm creating a cursor to my connection.cursor. This is SQL. This is using PyODBC. A cursor, you use a cursor just like we do in ArcPy. I write a SQL script, so I'm updating the weather, and I am now going to set the variables. Where, remember SQL, station equals the station I brought in from the CSV file. And then I'm committing it, and I'm closing the cursor every single time after I build it, execute it. Now, if you're updating, you need to use a commit. You've got to commit it in SQL because it won't be there. This is the standard code to use in PyODBC. I'm printing out the SQL command just to print it out. The SQL itself, the code. You can use, if you got it, you can use SQL Manager and build your own. You wouldn't believe some of the SQL scripts I pass in. I pass in one that I use for routing that has 5 joins in it, and you just got to make the whole SQL text. Like this is the text, remember? This is a string. You have to make it one string. No matter how many joins. I'm bringing in, I think it was 5 joins I'm bringing in. I'm joining different tables everywhere and everything. And I don't expect you to know SQL that well. You can get your DBA to come up with one for you if you need something like that. Main code section, update weather. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and open up our weather. Where you at? Oh, that's right. This is not an example. It's on the workshop. We're going to go ahead and open up our nice little weather MXD. The reason, okay, like I said, you can't use SQL on file geodatabases. That's a limitation. File geodatabases are a proprietary thing for Esri, and SQL, like PyODBC, cannot touch it. It doesn't understand it. It's really a file system. Okay. If you can see, these are my weather stations right here. I'm symbolizing them by rainfall, but you can see it's open. If I used ArcPy to update these features, it'll crash because it's being opened. If you got a service with that feature and you try to update it, it's open. It will not run using ArcPy. So that's why we use SQL and regular update the record name, or update the table using set each field and giving it the values. Remember, we have to break that string up and concatenate it, and this is a number, so we have to use string. Now, basically everything in there is a number. So we'll have to use str to convert it to string so we can concatenate it. Then, now the first one, just show you real quick. The first CSV file is what you're already seeing, where it resets all my data. See, that's what you saw on the screen. No rainfall, there's some temperatures on there, and the 1 through 9 are my weather stations. But here, we're changing the data. I'm giving it rainfall. I'm changing the temperatures. Cool? So, hope I can do this quick, because this thing will be quick. I am going to uncomment that CSV, comment my default CSV to reset everything. All right. How are we going to do this with one screen? We're going to open up the map. That ain't going to work. Just going to go quick. You ready? You already saw what it was. You know the map's open. Shoot. See how quick that was? Now, the map was open, so it held that feature. So we just refresh. Booyah. Data change. That's how you change data on a service out there. So if this was published as a service, that data on that service will be refreshed using SQL. It has no locks. You don't have to do it off hours. You don't have to bring that service down. You don't have to go to catalog and kill all connections to it and update it. SQL will change your attributes. I wouldn't use it on features, on shapes. Do not mess with object ID, but any attribute in there can be modified with SQL real easy. And just to prove that again, and we'll go over the code one more time after this, just to be fun. This has got new weather stuff. So I'm going to comment it out, grab the other CSV file we got. You can see how quick it is. We'll just sit there and wait a second. Let's clear this. I'm done. I even wrote what the SQL was. I'm updating. This is what the SQL that I'm passing PyODBC to, the cursor, to execute. Now we'll go back to map real quick. Guys, the reason I'm rushing kind of through this because I want you to have the capability to ask me questions. Okay, you see what that looks like now. Let's refresh. I can get my little mousey there. Booyah. See it's changed. That is the power of Python with features just changing attribute data. It can be opened up. It could be you can have 100 people consuming this feature, or a service consuming this feature. It's not versioned, so you don't have to compile, you don't have to compress or anything else. Reconcile and compress. You are doing this with SQL. Booyah, it changes. So that can be a major power thing for y'all to change attributes. Now, the cool thing about it is, guys, it doesn't have to be a CSV file. You can run processes up here. You can pull data anywhere else or do anything you want. And then run your cursor. Remember, you build your cursor using your connection file. And I'm making it global so I can use it anywhere. I can have another feature here. And I'm pull that in as a global. Remember, you're referencing that outside one. I'm opening that CSV file. And then I should have referenced it. It still captured it, but that's good. But you got to make a habit of referencing, because if I had the same variable in there, it would change it. Sorry guys, I wrote this real quick and it wasn't hard at all. That's the reason I was like, okay, let's just write it. The hardest part for me guys was to make the comments so y'all can understand it. Now, when I build a new function, I put this in here for me. So I call what the name of the function is. I'm not passing any inputs. I'm not expecting anything to return and what it does. And then for the end of my code, I say this is the end. Because then I know this is the end of my code block. Excuse me. So that's how quick SQL can update stuff for you. We would have to import PyODBC. And I'll show you that right now. So we can take a couple minutes on that because I really don't have, well, I got one more thing I can show you and play with real quick. And there's nothing I'm going to really show you the depth of. Basically, I got that under examples. Nope, I got it under, I wrote this the other night called notes. All right. This is where you can install Python at 3x. You don't really care about that. If you are using desktop, you know it installs Python 2.7 or 27 under C. You would have to give it the version, which because you can have different versions still on there, even when it reinstalls. You go into scripts and pip. So basically, this is where I set it up here. You can do this, open up a command window, type in CD, change your directory, right click and paste it. Oops, too far. I'm there. This is where pip is located under 2.7. I have the other locations, and say we want to install PyODBC. And once you install it like this module, it will always be there. So you go back here, pip install PyODBC. Oh yeah. It's going to say it's already installed for me. It says required, it's already done, but it'll install it all for you. Now I can use that in any script anywhere that I'm using the Python for desktop. Same thing with requests. Remember, we're going to do a request on a service. We're going to be doing the same thing. For you, it's there. Now, there's another thing I want to show you. I know you're going to have this notes. We're going to show this next one. I'm going to go through real quick on it because I don't have much time and I want to ask questions, answer questions for anybody. We're going to do the PDF for it. Sorry, mouse being mean to me. I'm being old like I am. I'm not shaky or anything. Don't get like that. I ain't that old. But I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. Naturally, it's already there for me because I want to show you one more quick one. This is a real life thing I'm working on for road closures. Okay? Road closures. Road closures is a great little package that ArcGIS Online has. We're having issues with each department doing their own road closure stuff. So we're going to centralize it. This is where I'm holding JPEGs and stuff. The code that you really like to see is this little bit right here. Come on. This little function right here. This function right here, you pass it what feature that you want. This right here opens up an MXD, zooms to the location. You can open up any layers that you haven't got open. takes the snapshot or picture of that and then resumes back to where, say, zoom to the feature. I want to go to 6,000 feet, and then I refresh it, get my picture, and then I bring it back to my original location, my original scale, which I grabbed up here. Well, I got scale. I grabbed scale up here somewhere. Trust me, I'll grab scale so I can bring it back. So the MXD will always be the same scale. And it grabs a snapshot of that. I am querying an ArcGIS Online hosted feature. The problem with that is you have to generate a token. Generate a token is nothing but making a feature down, a function. And I got to show this real quick. You pass all the data in, you get it. Because I got my username and password in there for AGOL, and I'm not going to show it to everybody. And you're too quick for me to, I'm going to let you see my snapshot of that. But I can give you how to do, and you can find the code easy, how to make a token. And then basically, you copy the URL of that function, and you put token on the end, where it says token equals, and then you concatenate the token. So what this does, it goes out to AGOL. It's querying the data for my features. Now it takes a little bit of time. You'll see a JPEG open up here in a second. There it is. That's the picture of my map. Oh, I'm sorry, it's done. And here's what it created for me. This is a press release that our communications department needs when we do a road closure. I grabbed the data out of that feature, basically, and this is what I grabbed out of ArcMap MXD, where it's located, so they can see it. And my MXD, yes, it's an MXD, but I am pulling all the data from, now this takes a little bit of time. I'm pulling everything from ArcGIS Online. I'm pulling their base map and our features from there. Oh crap, we only got 13 minutes. Well, you can see you can do any MXD with that. And like I said, I'm pulling their base map, not using Arc Pro, but using, oh gosh, don't refresh. Okay, this is ArcGIS Online base map. These are my features. You can see they are connected to my ArcGIS Online hosted feature. And real quick, to create a PDF, I'm passing my data in. Boom, I just created a PDF right there. Boom, boom. And then it's like old crystal reports. You got to know what line you're on, your height of your text. I'm using 40, but there's lots of documentation out there how to use FPDF. But that's all the code right there to make that PDF. So I want to go ahead and open it up since we got like 11 minutes for questions. And you don't have to text questions. So let's just go ahead and open it up live. Talk to me. And Kathy Clifton, I do have some stuff for you. I passed you some stuff. I know you want to work out on some stuff like zipping and everything like that. Not zipping, but be able to walk through your feature. I mean your directories. I can work with you outside of this. It's real easy code. And I've already done that. And then you talking about querying. Guys, you need to query any of your data, if's your query. If you don't bring it in with a where clause, if you're using ArcPy, the ArcPy.da.search cursor, you can put a where clause in there, or you can use a SQL where clause if you're just bringing data in. Is that cool, Kathy? Remember, if is after you got your data, if is your where clause. Anybody got questions?
This will work on any geoprocessing, right? We could just
I'm
go
sorry,
grab.
what's
Would this work on any geoprocessing? We could go grab the variables needed out of the toolbox and it'll.
Toolbox? No, it will not work with if you have a model. Okay, like I said, the bad part about, I'm sorry, I do not even have a model. I haven't had one in years.
No, I'm not thinking a model. I'm trying to do this on rasters.
Okay,
So
when you go to the
I'm gonna.
yeah, you remember, like I showed you when you had catalog open.
Yep.
And you want a tool, we can use this right here. Yes, I'm sorry, it crashed, but you want to clip, let's copy. You want to basically do a clip.
Yep.
Pull it up in your catalog, pull up the help, and it will show you exactly the code that you need.
Yep.
You know, your in feature, what you're clipping it by, and what the feature you want to call it out. And you have to give the location where you want to put that feature.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, any tool, any of the tools, that's what's so cool about it. You got to import ArcPy at the top, and any tools that you're licensed to use, you can use it.
Okay.
When you want to put it into SDE, which I don't do anything like that here, I'm sorry. You just truncate the SDE feature and you append it using the truncate and append tools. Okay? Every tool out there. Now, I don't guarantee all the documentation is 100% correct because it's Israel. And I already know that the people who write the documentation are not your developers. But it gives you a good 80% it's going to work. If it doesn't, Google it. Google is your best friend. So basically, any tool you got in catalog that you're licensed to use can be used on here in Python. Because technically, it's using Python and that tool.
Hey, Skip, this is Kat.
Hey.
Some of the examples that you were showing were not in the file that I downloaded last week, like the road closures. So they'll be there when we get the
road closures won't be there.
Okay.
Because I've got a username and password in there. Well, yes, it will be. Yes, it will be. I will just take out the username and password. I told you that some of these stuff that I've done, like last night and Saturday night, might not be there. They will be there after this class. And I will take out the username and password I used to get a token. So then you just use your AGOL username and password and you can generate a token. And you go to your feature, hosted feature, and you can get where the URL is for that feature stored on their ArcGIS server.
Okay.
And just go from there. Add the token on the end of it.
All right. Thanks.
Cool.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Skip, this is Amy.
Hey, Amy.
We've had a lot of people that are still having that 404 error on the Dropbox. And so when I looked it up, it was saying that either something changed, something is moved, removed, or missing. Can you double check and make sure it's still there for you as well?
I sure will. After class, I sure will. And I'll have it up there for at least 2 weeks or more. I'll leave it up there for a month. I only use the Dropbox for this. I don't use it for anything else out there. Be careful because I gave you full rights to that Dropbox. So I will make sure
That
all the
might
data
be,
is
yeah.
there. Okay, somebody might have accidentally deleted something or changed something. I will make sure after this class, go check this afternoon, and I'll make sure everything's up there right. Because I want you to have everything. Guys, if you're going to be a good developer, even in college, when they teach you how to program, they don't teach you everything. They teach you how the basics of things, and then you have to learn yourself. And learning yourself is not hard. Learning yourself is using Google or dissecting other scripts. And I put you a couple major scripts out there under the scripts. One is for getting Winston-Salem signs. Another one, I can't remember the name of it, but there's parts in there that are documented that you can, like, if you need to read XML, it's in there. And you might have to just tweak it, but you got your standard format for it. Any other questions? Come on, there's no stupid questions. And guys, one other thing before someone says anything, if you need to email me, don't hesitate. Go ahead. Now, I might not be able to get to you right there at 1 second. They've been really killing me here at work. But I will get back to you. I will not leave you hanging. Okay? I work from home, so it'll probably be off hours or whatever, but I will not leave you hanging. I like taking care of all of my fellow colleagues. You got something you're trying to do, I can help you with the coding of it if you need it. Come on, guys, questions?
Talk to me more about tokens.
Token is used because you're going into a secure ArcGIS server.
So would it be a token for the
is a
server,
secure-
or is it a token for the feature class?
Right. ArcGIS services are secured to your account. So what you're doing is building a token, which is your security pass to get to that service. And I will give you the code how to build the token, and you just add it to the end of your URL on your hosted feature on their server, and you'll get to it every single time.
And does it work in Portal too?
Yes, but if you got Portal, and you can do the same thing for Portal, because ArcGIS is nothing but a portal.
Right.
I didn't have time to go into Esri's ArcGIS Python API, which is installed with Pro. There's a lot more simpler ways of doing it because they condensed lots of things. I wish I had time to go over that, but I wanted to give you the basics of Python.
Yep.
And stuff like that. But if you want, you can always email me, and I can help you with that.
Okay, cool.
Like I said, I'll help you any way you want. Just don't pass usernames and passwords to me, please.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be responsible of anything happening. And I promise I do not attack anybody's stuff or anything like that. And like what I did for Map the Site, as an open REST endpoint, I know what their sensitive data is, and communication towers are not, because they give that to their vendors. They give them that link.
You rock, Skip. Thanks, man.
I'm sorry about that one project, just gremlins, but I do hope I showed you some stuff. That Python is very powerful. It can do lots of things with GIS. It can do stuff outside GIS that you might want to bring into your GIS. With the Python 3x, which comes with Pro, you can do those GUIs like I showed you, and I gave you the PyQt or the Qt Designer in that download, and you can build these nice little GUIs. There's documentation out there on that, on mine and also out in the world. And I also gave you in my snippets how to attach that GUI to your Python 3 code. Also, I gave you have to pip those libraries. those modules, the PyQt5 modules. Anytime you try to copy someone's script from somewhere and it crashes on the import means you don't have that module, you'll have to pip it in. And the text is out there, and I just showed you how to pip stuff with the command line.
Before you log off, also, there's going to be an exit poll here. If you can hang on just a second, guys, before you drop off.
I'm sorry, I'm taking to the last second, but
that's fine.
Guys, like I said, if you've got any questions or anything like this, I'm no expert. There's people out there way smarter than me, but I call myself proficient on this, and I can help you.
Very good. And just as a reminder, if you were unable to pre-register for this workshop, please go ahead and send an email to ncaugboard@gmail.com and include your Zoom name and your full name so that they can make sure to compare the time to Zoom, the Zoom report and the list that they have to get you your certificates of participation.
And the cool thing about it is, if my script crashed, you're going to get a lot of that, and you'll have to debug it. And any script you write, even out those other ones I showed you, it took me about an hour to write. Yeah, I fat finger typed something and it crashed, and I had to figure out why. But the more you program or more you use Python, the more quicker you can find those errors. And there's lots of editors out there. PyScripter is a real good one to work with at the beginning. There's another one if you really get good in developing or programming. PC Community, PyCharm Community is a free download, but it's a lot harder to learn that IDE, but it is a very, very strong IDE. It matches, this is it right here, it matches Visual Studios of what it can do. That's for your, developers have been out there for a while. I use it in Python 3x because I can keep my IDE my interpreter separate. But you can use Python 3 for this same editor. You just have to change it every time you change your code. Because these packages will only load into what version of Python you're using. So if you're using 3x and you want to load and upload some modules to 3x one, even though you got it in 2x, you'll have to pip it into your 3x.
All right, looks like we have a little bit past the top of the hour. So that concludes today's presentation. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, you have Skip's email address. I posted several times in the chat. You're also welcome to save the chat. The videos will be posted sometime within the next couple of weeks on the registration website. All right, thank you. And that concludes today's presentation.